Some discoveries don't make sense, like cities buried in sand, or artifacts that shouldn't exist. Things found, documented, and then quietly forgotten. But tonight we're digging them back up. From frozen bodies in the Alps, to ships lost beneath the sea, every chapter hides a truth stranger than fiction. So if you love sinking into ancient mysteries, they say good luck follows those who like and subscribe before the story begins. The footprints beneath the ice. In the cold dawn light of the Pacific Northwest, the waves roll softly against the rugged shores of Calvert Island. The wind hums through the pines, and gulls cry faintly in the distance. This is British Columbia's coast, wild, ancient, and untamed. But beneath the surface of this quiet landscape lies a story that stretches back over 13,000 years. A story told not through words or carvings or bones, but through footprints. It began with a team of archaeologists, led by Duncan McLaren, who came to these shores seeking traces of early human life. What they found instead was something far more intimate, the impressions of bare feet pressed into the clay. They were delicate, faint, and fleeting, but they were human. 3 individuals, 2 adults and a child, who had walked here so long ago that glaciers still ruled the north. Imagine the scene for a moment. The tide was lower then, the sea held back by walls of ice, the air was sharp and clean, moss and spruce forests clung to the rocky hillsides. Perhaps it was springtime when the ice began to melt and fresh water streamed down to the sea. In that moment, 3 people stepped across the soft clay, leaving behind a trail of 29 footprints that would remain hidden for thousands of years. Their steps tell a story no text could ever preserve. The adult's prints are larger, steady, leading the way. The child's are smaller, scattered between them, sometimes close, sometimes trailing behind. Perhaps a parent reached out a hand to steady the child. Perhaps they were gathering shellfish at low tide, or searching for driftwood. We don't know their names or the words they spoke, but through these tracks, we feel their presence, the warmth of their lives against the cold of prehistory. The discovery of these footprints changed how we understand migration into North America. For generations, scientists believed that early humans entered the continent through an inland corridor, passing between melting glaciers thousands of miles east. But these footprints on Calvert Island suggest something else, that ancient peoples followed a coastal route, moving along the edge of the Pacific, hunting, fishing, and exploring. The ocean, not the mountains, was their highway. For archaeologists, this was like finding a whisper frozen in time. Footprints are fragile things. They vanish with wind, rain, and tide. The fact that these survived means they were protected by extraordinary luck, covered quickly by sand and sediment, sealed beneath layers of time. When the team uncovered them, they were not just looking at evidence, they were standing where those ancient people once stood, literally stepping in their footprints. It's humbling to think that 13,000 years ago, people already knew this land, its tides, its rhythms, its seasons. They had families, fears, and hopes. They laughed, hunted, built fires, and watched the stars, and for one brief moment, they walked across the wet clay of Calvert Island, leaving behind a trace that would one day speak across the ages. Archaeology often deals with stone tools, bones, or ruins, things that feel distant, inhuman, but footprints are different. They connect us directly. When you look at them, you don't think of early humans or migration theories. You think of people, of parents guiding children, of tired travelers, of warmth and movement and care. You think of yourself. The clay held their weight, the moisture preserved it, and time hid it away. Thousands of years passed. Ice retreated, forests grew, generations lived and died, and beneath it all those 29 prints waited. The tides rose and fell, the world changed. Civilizations were born, empires rose, and still the footprints remained, silent witnesses beneath the soil. When McLaren's team first brushed away the sand and realized what they'd found, there must have been a pause, a quiet moment when time folded in on itself, a moment when science gave way to awe. Because for the first time in over 10 millennia, human eyes saw the path those ancient travelers took. The prints were so fresh-looking, so lifelike, it almost felt as though the people had just left, as if you could follow them and find their camp still warm. We often talk about the Ice Age as something cold and harsh, but to them this coast was home. The sea offered food, the forests gave shelter, and the land connected worlds. These people were part of a web that stretched along the Pacific Rim, from Asia to Alaska to the Americas. They were explorers, survivors, and storytellers long before history began. What makes these footprints even more extraordinary is how they survived the ocean's rhythm. Every tide that rolled across this island since then has tried to erase them, yet they endured, as though the earth itself wanted to keep their memory alive. It's a reminder that history is not just found in grand monuments, but in the smallest imprints, the touch of a hand, the mark of a foot, the breath of a word. As you picture those footprints now, imagine kneeling beside them, the clay cool beneath your fingers, the sea breeze brushing your face. You trace the outline of the child's foot, small, light, uneven, then the adult's, deep, certain, grounded. You look up at the horizon and wonder, what did they see? What did they dream? What was their world like before history had a name? Perhaps they were among the first to reach this place after following the edge of the ice. Maybe they were scouts, mapping out new territory for their people. Or perhaps they were simply a family, wandering, surviving, moving toward a future they could never imagine. Their story is not written in books or told in myths. It's written in the ground. When we study these ancient traces, we realize how small the distance between us and them truly is. The technology changes, the language changes, but the rhythm, the movement of life remains. The king beneath the car park. In the heart of modern Leicester, cars come and go across a simple parking lot. People hurry through their daily routines, groceries, errands, work, unaware that just a few meters below the asphalt lies the grave of a king, a monarch lost for more than 500 years. His name was Richard III. He ruled England from 1483 to 1485, a reign short, turbulent, and shadowed by one of history's most infamous reputations. Shakespeare painted him as a twisted villain, a scheming hunchback who murdered his nephews to steal the crown. For centuries that was how the world remembered him. A monster, not a man, but every story has two sides. And beneath the pavement of Leicester, a quiet truth was waiting to rewrite one of Britain's oldest mysteries. Richard's life ended violently on August 22, 1485, at the Battle of Bosworth Field. It was the final clash of the Wars of the Roses, the brutal civil war between the houses of York and Lancaster. Richard led his men into battle under the White Rose of York, facing Henry Tudor, whose victory would begin the Tudor dynasty. Accounts say Richard fought bravely, refusing to flee. He was the last English king to die on the battlefield, but after his death, his body was stripped, thrown across a horse, and carried back to Leicester, humiliated in death, as he was in legend. Then he disappeared. For more than half a millennium, no one knew where Richard III's remains lay. Chroniclers mentioned a burial at Greyfriars, a Franciscan friary long lost to time. But as centuries passed, the monastery vanished beneath the growing city. Streets changed, buildings rose, wars came and went, and Richard became a ghost of rumor. By the 21st century, Greyfriars was forgotten. Its sacred ground had become a nondescript parking lot behind a social services building. No one imagined that the last Plantagenet king of England might rest beneath the painted lines of that car park. No one except a small group of determined historians. Among them was Philippa Langley, a member of the Richard III Society, an organization devoted to separating fact from Tudor propaganda. She believed Richard's reputation had been twisted by politics and poetry. And she believed his body could still be found. Armed with old maps, records, and unshakable conviction, Langley began searching for Greyfriars in 2004. The project seemed impossible, an amateur historian chasing a legend, yet she persisted, poring over archives, studying topography, and walking the streets where the friary might once have stood. In 2012, after years of planning, archaeologists from the University of Leicester joined her in a small excavation. Their target, a corner of that city car park. On the very first day of digging, they uncovered human bones. At first, no one dared believe it. The skeleton was incomplete, but well preserved. The spine was curved by scoliosis, echoing the image of a crooked king. The skull bore evidence of fatal blows, the unmistakable marks of battle. And as the scientists brushed away the soil, they realized something extraordinary. The body had been hastily buried, hands bound, in the choir of what had once been a church. Could it really be him? DNA tests compared samples from living descendants of Richard's sister, Anne of York. Against all odds, the results matched. In February 2013, the University of Leicester announced to the world, the remains found under the car park were indeed those of King Richard III. The news swept through Britain like a shockwave. A centuries-old mystery had been solved, not in a grand cathedral, but beneath an ordinary parking space labeled R. The irony was almost poetic, a king of England lying forgotten under concrete. But the discovery did more than locate a body. It forced the world to confront how history is written, and how easily a man's story can be buried beneath myth. Richard III was no saint. He lived in an age of betrayal, ambition, and ruthless survival. Yet evidence suggests he was also a capable ruler, a reformer of laws, a man who spoke for justice, who ended unfair taxation, and introduced the presumption of innocence in English courts. He may not have been the villain Shakespeare imagined. The discovery sparked debates, documentaries, and renewed scholarship. Was Shakespeare's depiction pure fiction, crafted to please Tudor kings? Had propaganda replaced truth? In classrooms and museums, people began to see Richard, not as a monster, but as a mystery. A human being whose story had been rewritten by those who came after. When his remains were studied, every bone told part of his final story. The curved spine explained his distinctive posture, not the grotesque deformity of legend, but mild scoliosis, hidden beneath armor. The skull bore 2 fatal wounds, one likely from a sword, another from a halberd, both delivered after his helmet was lost. He had fought, unhorsed, surrounded, and still swinging his blade until the end. Historians pieced together his last moments, his horse mired in mud, his crown falling, his enemies closing in. A horse, my kingdom for a horse. Shakespeare had written, and though dramatized, it captured the chaos of that final stand. After Bosworth, Henry Tudor claimed victory and the throne. To secure his new dynasty, Richard's image had to be destroyed. The Tudor chroniclers painted him as evil incarnate, the child-murdering usurper. Centuries later, Shakespeare would immortalize that vision in verse, and the world accepted it as truth. Yet beneath Leicester's streets, the real Richard waited, silent, unjudging, his story sealed in the earth. In 2015, more than 500 years after his death, Richard III was laid to rest again, this time with dignity. His coffin, carved from English oak, was carried through the million-year-old mammoth. Far to the north, where the land meets the frozen horizon, lies a place where time moves differently. The wind there whispers through endless plains of ice and snow, carrying secrets from a world that once belonged to giants. And beneath that frozen silence, locked away for more than 1,000,000 years, waited the story of one of the Earth's oldest survivors. It began not with bones or tusks, but with teeth. Decades ago in the 1970s, a Russian paleontologist named Andrei Sher walked across the cold expanse of eastern Siberia. He collected samples from the permafrost, fragments of long-dead creatures hidden in the frozen earth. Among them were a few mammoth teeth, ordinary in shape, extraordinary in age. For years they sat preserved in collections, catalogued and studied in the most basic ways. But as science advanced, a quiet revolution began, one not of bones but of molecules. Researchers realized that DNA, the thread of life itself, could sometimes survive far longer than anyone imagined, and those old teeth held a secret even time couldn't erase. In 2021, scientists revisited Sher's discovery. With the help of cutting-edge sequencing technology, they extracted DNA that was more than 1,000,000 years old, the oldest genetic material ever recovered. What they found didn't just confirm the existence of ancient mammoths, it revealed something far more profound. This was a new species, one that lived long before the famous woolly mammoths ever roamed the Ice Age tundra. The DNA told a story written in microscopic letters, a story of adaptation, endurance, and change. This mammoth species had evolved unique traits to survive the brutal climate of Siberia. Its genes carried the blueprints for thicker fur, better fat insulation, and specialized teeth for grinding through tough frozen vegetation. Each strand of DNA was like a message from an age when glaciers ruled the earth, and the air itself bit like glass. Imagine what that world looked like. The ground was buried beneath sheets of ice stretching for thousands of miles. The wind howled through frozen valleys, and across those plains wandered colossal creatures, shaggy, powerful, and built for survival. The mammoths were not just animals, they were symbols of endurance. They lived through cycles of cold and warmth, through scarcity and abundance, shaping the landscape as they roamed. For scientists, sequencing the DNA of this ancient mammoth was like opening a window into deep time. Before this, the oldest DNA ever studied belonged to a horse, around 700,000 years old. But the mammoth's genome stretched that record back twice as far, into an age so distant it almost feels beyond imagination. From those frozen fragments, researchers could trace how evolution sculpted these creatures. They could see when certain adaptations appeared, when genes for hair growth, body fat, and cold resistance first emerged, and they could even follow how mammoth species diverged, splitting, merging, and evolving as ice sheets advanced and retreated. It's humbling to think that in a few strands of DNA, the entire saga of an ancient species can be read, like finding a novel written by nature itself. But this discovery wasn't just about understanding the past. It was about the future of science. If DNA could survive 1,000,000 years locked inside frozen soil, what else might be possible? Could we one day reconstruct entire ecosystems? Could we even bring back species long extinct? Those are questions scientists tread carefully around. Because resurrection is not the goal, understanding is. Every discovery like this helps us grasp how life endures, adapts, and transforms under pressure. The mammoth's DNA became a bridge between eras, connecting us, fragile and brief, to a world that has been gone for 1,000,000 years. When Andrei Sher collected those teeth, he couldn't have known what they would one day reveal. He was documenting fossils, unaware that science would one day give voice to the molecules within. That is the magic of archaeology and paleogenetics, the way the smallest details can hold the biggest truths. Somewhere beneath the endless Siberian ice, there are still more bones, more secrets. Each fragment holds whispers from the deep past, reminders that Earth remembers more than it shows, and every now and then it lets us peek through the veil. Imagine holding a piece of that mammoth tooth in your hand. You're touching something older than the first humans, older than mountains we climb today, older even than some rivers that still run. Its surface feels like stone, but inside, frozen in microscopic code, are the instructions for life itself, instructions written long before we ever appeared. The mammoth is gone now, but through that DNA, it breathes again, not in flesh, but in knowledge. And in that knowledge lies something beautiful, a reminder that life always finds a way to speak across time. The tundra where it once walked is quiet now, but if you stand there long enough, listening to the cold wind, you might almost hear the soft echo of heavy steps across the frozen earth. A heartbeat from 1,000,000 years ago, still pulsing faintly in the silent. Pyramid builder tombs, and other incredible finds. In the golden sands of Egypt, where the desert stretches endlessly toward the horizon, lie some of humanity's greatest architectural achievements, the pyramids, monuments of wonder, mystery, and ingenuity. For centuries, myths and legends swirled around them, and one of the most persistent was this: the pyramids were built by slaves, but discoveries in the sands quietly shattered that narrative. In 1990, archaeologists uncovered tombs belonging to the workers who built the pyramids, not slaves, not nameless laborers, but men who were fed, cared for, and honored for their service. 2 decades later, another set of tombs emerged near the first site, reinforcing the story. From the bones, scientists could read the lives of these builders. They ate meat, suggesting a rich diet uncommon for laborers of the time. They worked in 3-month shifts, rotating with precision and discipline. Their hands, shoulders, and spines bore the marks of strenuous labor, evidence of arthritis etched into their bones by decades of hard work. Yet even in death, they were honored with tombs made of mud brick, resting eternally near the monumental creations they helped raise. This was not the work of slaves. This was a society that respected its builders, understanding the sacred nature of the task at hand. Thousands of miles away, in the depths of the Mediterranean, another archaeological marvel surfaced. In 2021, a Roman shipwreck was discovered off the coast of Sicily. Hidden beneath centuries of sediment, the vessel rested silently, a ghost of trade from the ancient world. Inside were hundreds of amphorae, jars that once carried wine across the Mediterranean, evidence of trade, connection, and daily life. How did scientists find such a treasure? Not by luck alone, but by ingenuity. A remote-controlled submarine robot scoured the seabed, revealing this lost window into Roman commerce. Each jar, each artifact, became a story, a whisper of the people, their journeys, and the civilization that shaped an entire continent. And even as the Romans traveled and traded, gods traveled too. In Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, archaeologist Hisham Hussein and his team uncovered a temple dedicated to Zeus Cassios in 2022, a hybrid deity, part Greek thunder god, part mountain spirit, whose presence spoke to the reach of culture, belief, and empire. Inscriptions revealed that Emperor Hadrian, who ruled from 1117 to 138 AD, had renovated the temple, blending Roman authority with local worship. Time moves differently in every place, and sometimes, stories emerge from the most unexpected corners. In British Columbia, Canada, archaeologists unearthed a Japanese logging camp from the 1920s, hidden in dense forests northeast of Vancouver. Excavated in 2004 by Robert Muckle and his students, the site contained 14 houses, a shrine, a bathhouse, and everyday objects like rice bowls and sake bottles. The camp had been hastily abandoned, likely due to internment during World War II, a small forgotten chapter of global history, lying quietly beneath the trees. Even the frozen plains of Siberia hold secrets of warriors and nomads. In the 1970s, archaeologists discovered the Scythian burial mound of Arzon, filled with remains, horses, and thousands of golden artifacts. Decades later, a second site, Arzon II, was uncovered, and in 2003, the skeleton of a slain warrior was studied. Shot through the eye, and left with the evidence of struggle, he offered insight into the brutal realities of nomadic life. The Scythians, mysterious horse-riding people, left behind, not just treasures, but a story of survival, conflict, and ritual that would shape our understanding of their culture. Some losses are tragic in their scale. The Great Library of Alexandria, home to the world's knowledge, was lost to fire, war, and time. Yet in 2004, a joint Egyptian-Polish team discovered the ruins of the library itself, vast lecture halls capable of holding 5,000 minds at once. Though the volumes are gone, the space remained, a testament to human curiosity, scholarship, and the enduring quest for knowledge, and the Egyptian sands still whisper new stories. In 2019, researchers uncovered a palace of Ramesses II at Abydos. A stone walkway revealed the remnants of the pharaoh's residence. Inscriptions identified the palace as belonging to Ramesses the Great, immortalized in literature as Ozymandias. Here, the grandeur of a king's life, his vision, and his mark on history lay exposed once again. Across the Atlantic, in Jamestown, Virginia, early settlers left traces of their lives. In 2010, archaeologists unearthed 4 prominent settlers' remains: Captain Gabriel Archer, Reverend Robert Hunt, Captain William West, and Sir Ferdinando Wainman. Analysis of their bones revealed dietary changes, disease, and the physical toll of colonization. These discoveries allow us to step into the fragile, tenuous world of early English America, a world of risk, adaptation, and survival. Yet some discoveries are smaller in stature but no less fascinating. In 2003, the remains of Homo floresiensis were unearthed on Flores, Indonesia. A diminutive archaic human species, nicknamed the Hobbit, lived alongside modern humans until 50,000 years ago. More recently, in 2019, Homo luzonensis was found in the Philippines, another tiny enigmatic relative. These finds challenge assumptions about human evolution and hint at countless stories still buried beneath Earth's surface. And once more, the frozen mammoth of Siberia joins the tale. Over 1.6 million years old, its DNA offers a bridge into the deep past, revealing adaptations, climate endurance, and species evolution that shaped life long before humans existed. Even Bronze Age Spain contributes its tale. In 214, La Almaloya revealed the remains of a woman of influence, buried with treasures and a silver diadem. Scrolls in the Cave of Horror. In the stark arid expanse of the Judean desert, where cliffs rise sharply from the valleys below, and the sun casts long golden shadows over the rocky terrain, history sleeps quietly, hidden in caves and craggy recesses. One such cave, perched high above the Dead Sea, earned a name that evokes both dread and fascination: the Cave of Horror. It is here, among jagged stones and the echo of ancient winds, that a story unfolds, one that bridges 2 millennia, reaching across centuries to whisper secrets about faith, culture, and human life long past. Between 1946 and 1956, explorers and archaeologists made a discovery that would forever change our understanding of the ancient world. Hidden in the Qumran caves were the Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient manuscripts that included the oldest surviving versions of books that would later form parts of the Hebrew Bible, and eventually the Christian Old Testament. These texts weren't just old, they were revolutionary, offering insight into the beliefs, rituals, and daily lives of people living 2,000 years ago. The scrolls themselves were delicate, fragile, and astonishingly preserved. Written on parchment and papyrus, some were wrapped with care, others tucked into clay jars, lying quietly for centuries in darkness. Scholars, paleographers, and historians examined every fragment, deciphering the faded ink to reconstruct words that hadn't been spoken aloud in over 2,000 years. Each line carried the weight of a civilization, the pulse of thought, and the rhythm of devotion long past. Yet the story of discovery did not end in the 1950s. In March of 2021, archaeologists returned to the Judean desert and uncovered new fragments in one of the caves, a cave already steeped in mystery and ominous history. Nicknamed the Cave of Horror because of the skeletons found among its hidden chambers, it offered evidence that life and death intertwined in remarkable, often chilling ways. The newly found scrolls belonged to the Book of the 12, part of what is now known as the Hebrew Bible. These fragments weren't merely duplicates of known texts. They contained variations, subtle, intriguing differences from the versions we recognize today. Words that had been altered, passages phrased differently, ideas expressed in ways that shed new light on beliefs, law, and prophecy. Each fragment seemed to carry its own story, as if the scribes who wrote them intended to leave a puzzle for future generations. Imagine the scene, high on a cliff, the wind whipping through crevices, the sun blazing overhead, and in the shadowed mouth of a cave, scrolls lying hidden for centuries. Around them, skeletal remains tell another tale, of people who sought refuge, perhaps during times of war, persecution, or exile. These were not merely texts. They were companions in survival, witnesses to human resilience in the face of adversity. The Cave of Horror is so named for good reason. In the 1950s, archaeologists unearthed dozens of skeletons inside, many of them showing signs of violent death. The evidence suggested that those who sought shelter in the cave may have perished during the Roman suppression of Jewish revolts in the 1st century CE. Yet even in death, the scrolls endured, untouched by the tragedy surrounding them. They had been placed carefully, deliberately, as if the scribes and caretakers understood the importance of leaving a message for the future, a whisper across the ages. These new fragments, nearly 2,000 years old, offer not just historical data, but a profound glimpse into human thought, belief, and expression. They demonstrate that texts were living documents, evolving as they were copied and transmitted. Words were adjusted, perhaps intentionally, perhaps by accident, but in ways that reveal the priorities, concerns, and interpretations of the people who preserved them. Scholars now pore over each line, each fragment, comparing them to the canonical texts that have survived elsewhere. Every difference sparks debate, curiosity, and wonder. Why was this phrase changed? What does this new word tell us about the worldview of the scribes? And how might this shift our understanding of early Judaism and the foundations of the texts that would shape civilizations? But the story is not only about the text, it is about place. The harsh, beautiful, and unforgiving landscape of the Judean desert, the cliffs, the valleys, the stony heights, all of them witness to the drama of human life and death, all of them silent partners in the preservation of knowledge. Walking along those cliffs today, one can almost imagine the figures of ancient scribes, candlelight flickering across their parchment, hands steady as they wrote messages meant to survive the ravages of time. And then there is the wonder of survival itself. scrolls, made of organic materials, enduring centuries of heat, wind, and sand. Skeletons, pressed against the walls, enduring the passage of millennia. A record of human experience, hope, fear, and devotion, preserved in one of the most extreme environments imaginable. The Cave of Horror stands as a testament, not only to the past, but to the endurance of knowledge, and the human need to communicate, to remember, and to leave a mark upon the world. Each fragment recovered today adds a layer of richness to the story. Scholars carefully reconstruct the text, sometimes piecing together letters, sometimes entire sentences. The process is painstaking, meditative, deliberate. It is a conversation across time, a dialogue between the living and the dead, between scribes and modern readers. And as the desert winds swirl outside the cave, one can almost hear the quiet rustle of ancient parchment, the whisper of words that have waited patiently to be read once more. Perhaps the most haunting part of all is this: the cave still guards secrets. Fragments likely remain undiscovered, waiting quietly in hidden crevices, untouched by human eyes. And somewhere, deep in the silence, the past continues to speak of faith, of survival, of humanity itself. So let your mind wander to the cliffs of the Judean desert. Picture the scrolls, fragile and ancient, lying in clay jars. Imagine the scribes' careful hands, the shadows of people long gone, and the skeletons that tell stories of fear, courage, and endurance. Listen to the wind whisper through the cave's mouth. Let your thoughts drift along with the text, tracing the lines of history back through millennia, because in the Cave of Horror the past is alive. Every fragment. The Ring of Silvianus. In the quiet corners of history, sometimes the smallest objects carry the largest stories. One such object is a ring, modest in size yet monumental in influence, the Ring of Silvianus. On the surface, it appears to be just a gold ring, crafted nearly 1600 years ago. But its journey across time, myth, and human imagination is extraordinary. The story begins in the 4th century CE, during the late Roman Empire. A gold ring, finely crafted, bore the inscription, Senische, or Senische. It was likely an item of personal significance, a possession meant to mark identity, honor, or status. Little could anyone know that this small band of gold would resonate across centuries in ways far beyond the intentions of its maker. The ring, like so many artifacts of the past, did not remain in its original context. It disappeared, lost to time, wandering through history unseen. Then, in 1785, it was rediscovered, not in the halls of a museum, nor in a carefully curated archaeological dig, but on a quiet farm in England, lying in the soil, almost innocuous, almost ordinary. For decades it rested in relative obscurity, a small relic of a distant era. Centuries later, the ring's story intertwined with another discovery, one that would give it a voice, a cursed tablet unearthed by the archaeologist Mortimer Wheeler. While working on the excavation of a Roman temple in Lydney Park, Wheeler uncovered the tablet, a thin piece of lead, inscribed with words meant to carry a curse across space and time. It read, in part, Silvianus has lost a ring. Senescienus permits no good health until it is returned to the Temple of Nodens. The connection was clear. This was no ordinary inscription. Someone had lost the ring, and the language of the curse demanded that justice be restored, that the ring be returned, that misfortune be lifted. In an age when Roman religious practices intertwined with magic, superstition, and ritual, these words were weighty, and here is where the story takes a remarkable twist. Tolkien enters the scene. Wheeler, studying the tablet in the temple, needed expertise on the deity Nodens, a god associated with healing, the sea, and hunting. He consulted the young Oxford scholar, J.R. Tolkien, for help interpreting the references. Tolkien's interest in myth, linguistics, and ancient artifacts converged with this enigmatic object and its curse. It is widely believed that the Ring of Silvianus and the story of the curse inspired Tolkien in his later creation of the One Ring, the legendary object around which the Lord of the Rings revolves. But let's slow down. Imagine the ring, lost for centuries, unearthed from the earth in a farmer's field, and then connected to an ancient temple, its meaning shrouded in words of anger, justice, and divine authority. Picture the leaden curse tablet, carefully inscribed with letters that carry the hopes and threats of someone from the distant past. Think about the temple itself, its columns and walls echoing with prayer and ritual, standing silent and solitary as the modern archaeologist brushes away centuries of dirt. And somewhere, in the halls of Oxford, a young Tolkien is reading these words, deciphering their meaning, letting his imagination wander through history, myth, and legend. The Ring of Silvianus exemplifies the power of objects to carry stories, not just across space, but across time and culture. It is a reminder that history is not always found in grand monuments, in kings' tombs, or in ancient libraries. Sometimes it is in the smallest of things, a ring, a fragment, a whisper of metal and ink, waiting patiently for human curiosity to awaken it. And the curse itself, it speaks volumes. It reveals beliefs about justice, retribution, and divine intervention. Losing the ring was not merely misplacing a piece of jewelry, it was an offense that required ritual correction. Senecinus, the figure who possessed it after its loss, could not enjoy health or prosperity until the object was returned. These words, carved in metal over a millennium ago, bridge human thought across centuries. They connect the lives of Romans, archaeologists, and modern readers in a single unbroken chain. Even the temple adds its own story. Lydney Park, with its woodland and river nearby, seems quiet and peaceful today. Yet for those Romans, it was a center of worship, ceremony, and divine communication. Every stone may have absorbed prayers. Every altar may have echoed with ritual chants. Standing there now, with the wind rustling through the trees, one can imagine the sound of bronze, of whispered words, of devout attention to gods whose names are now almost forgotten. And the ring, oh the ring, embodies all of this. Its gold glimmers faintly in the light of imagination, a circle of continuity between past and present. It is, in a way, a time machine, connecting a Roman citizen who lost a precious item with a modern reader, a Tolkien scholar, a fan of fantasy and myth. It reminds us that human experience, hope, fear, and creativity remain constant, even as centuries pass and civilizations rise and fall. When we study artifacts like the Ring of Silvanus, we are doing more than looking at gold. We are listening to whispers of ancient hands, to rituals and curses, to lives lived and stories almost forgotten. And sometimes, as in this case, those whispers echo forward in the work of a writer who would shape the imagination of millions. So as you drift through the quiet of your mind, picture Lydney Park in the 4th century, the temple standing, a young Roman clutching the ring. Imagine the lost ring, buried, found, and linked to a curse. Picture Tolkien reading the tablet, imagining a ring that can dominate hearts and fates. Let your thoughts linger there. Trace the path of that golden circle through time, across centuries, across landscapes, through the hands of strangers, until it reaches you. The Ring of Silvanus is small, yet it is mighty. It reminds us that even the tiniest object can carry a world of history, myth, and mystery. And in the silence of your mind, let that world unfold slowly, thoughtfully, and endlessly, just as it has for nearly 2 millennia. Akrotiri, hidden beneath the steep volcanic cliffs of Santorini, an island in the Aegean Sea, lies a city frozen in time. Its story begins thousands of years ago, long before modern civilization carved out the landscapes we know today. For 300-500 years, the town of Akrotiri slept silently beneath layers of volcanic ash, a city perfectly preserved, waiting patiently for the hands of archaeologists to uncover its secrets. In 1967, the earth finally yielded its treasure. Excavators carefully removed the ash and debris, revealing streets, homes, and frescoes as vivid as they had been in their creator's time. Akrotiri was unlike any other prehistoric settlement. It was advanced, bustling, and sophisticated, a city that challenges our understanding of Bronze Age civilizations. Imagine walking its paved streets. They wind between multi-story homes, built with knowledge of architecture that would impress even modern eyes. Some houses had multiple levels, internal staircases, and carefully designed layouts that maximized space and light. Walls were painted with bright frescoes, depicting nature, animals, and everyday life. Colors endured, centuries later, as though the volcano had sealed them in a protective time capsule. But Akrotiri's ingenuity did not stop at architecture. Its drainage and sewage system was remarkably advanced, far ahead of its era. Stone channels, terracotta pipes, and covered drains carried water away from the city, maintaining cleanliness and hygiene. Public squares and marketplaces were carefully planned, demonstrating a community that valued organization and trade. The layout shows that Akrotiri was not merely a settlement, it was a thriving urban center, a hub of culture, commerce, and artistry. The inhabitants of Akrotiri were skilled artisans, traders, and visionaries. Pottery, jewelry, and tools reveal craftsmanship and aesthetic sensibilities that hint at a deeply artistic society. Frescoes show dolphins leaping in the waves, monkeys climbing trees, and even ceremonial scenes, all painted with such precision and care that it feels like stepping directly into their world. Here, history whispers not just of survival, but of creativity, of human ingenuity, and of a culture that celebrated beauty in everyday life. Then came the eruption. The volcanic explosion that would forever change the landscape of Santorini buried Akrotiri in ash and pumice, a destructive force that paradoxically preserved the city. Streets were covered, homes entombed, frescoes protected. Unlike Pompeii, where human bodies are present, Akrotiri seems almost eerily empty. There were no mass casualties discovered, suggesting that its residents may have escaped, leaving their homes and treasures behind. This absence adds to the mystery. Who were these people, and where did they go? Many scholars and enthusiasts have linked Akrotiri to the legend of Atlantis, the lost city described by Plato. While we cannot prove such connections, the parallels are striking. A thriving city, rich in culture and sophistication, disappears beneath catastrophic volcanic forces. Its legacy is preserved only in the memory of the earth and the meticulous work of archaeologists centuries later. Archaeological work continues to this day. Each excavation uncovers further wonders, new frescoes, remnants of homes, storage jars, and everyday objects that reveal the rhythms of daily life. Every artifact tells a story of trade across the Aegean, of social hierarchy, of the ambitions and fears of a people whose names we will likely never know. Walking through a crotiri today, one can still feel the pulse of the ancient city. The stone streets whisper, the walls hum with color, and the ruins seem almost alive, speaking of resilience, creativity, and the fragility of human endeavor. It is a place where time itself seems to stand still, where the present meets the past, and where we are reminded of both human brilliance and the enduring power of nature. A crotiri is not just an archaeological site, it is a window into the Bronze Age, a testament to the sophistication of early civilizations. It challenges the notion that the past was simple or primitive. These people understood architecture, urban planning, and art in ways that continue to astonish us today. And yet the greatest mystery remains: their fate. Did they flee the eruption in time? Were they absorbed into nearby settlements? Or did they vanish entirely, leaving only the ashes of their homes behind? While we may never know, their story endures in the frescoes, streets, and artifacts they left behind, inviting us to imagine, explore, and marvel. As you drift into the quiet of your thoughts, picture the streets of Akrotiri, bustling with life. Hear the footsteps of its people along stone pathways, feel the warmth of the sun on painted walls, and let your mind wander through a city that existed long before our time, yet speaks to us with a voice that is unmistakably human. The city sleeps no more. Its story has been awakened, etched forever in stone, ash, and imagination. The mummification workshop of Saqqara. Beneath the golden sands of Saqqara, Egypt, a chilling story has been waiting for millennia to be uncovered. Saqqara is known as one of the most important necropolises of ancient Egypt, a sprawling cemetery where the pharaohs, nobles, and commoners of antiquity were laid to rest. It stretches across vast plains, dotted with pyramids, mastabas, and tombs, each a silent witness to lives long past. And yet, despite centuries of exploration, the sands continue to guard secrets that we are only beginning to understand. In 2023, archaeologists made one of the most intriguing and eerie discoveries in modern Egyptian archaeology: a 2,300-year-old mummification workshop, hidden beneath layers of soil and stone, frozen in time as though the embalmers had just stepped away. Imagine a space filled with the tools of an ancient craft, untouched for centuries, stone beds lined for the dead, jars of oils and resins still in place, measuring cups used for precise rituals, and implements designed for the most delicate, sacred of procedures. This was not just a workplace, it was a sanctuary of death, a space where life met eternity. The discovery is remarkable for many reasons. First, the workshop was constructed around two tombs, each hundreds of years older than the workshop itself. This layering of history suggests continuity, a reverence for the past, and perhaps a recognition that those who had gone before still held a presence in the world of the living. For archaeologists, it was like peering through a window into the minds of the ancient Egyptians, seeing exactly how they prepared their dead for the next world. Mummification, as most of us know from movies and books, is a mysterious and highly ritualized process. Hollywood has given us glimpses, sometimes dramatic, sometimes grotesque, but nothing compares to seeing the real space where it was carried out. The stone beds themselves are designed with precision, perfectly sized to support bodies through the embalming stages. Oils and resins, carefully stored in jars, were prepared to preserve flesh and honor the deceased. Oils and resins, carefully stored in jars, were prepared to preserve flesh and honor the deceased. Every tool has a purpose, every placement intentional. From the stirring of natron to the wrapping of limbs, it is a practice rooted not in fear of death, but in respect for life and the journey beyond. Walking through this ancient workshop in imagination, one can almost feel the rhythm of the embalmer's work. Perhaps in the quiet of dawn, the artisans arrived, carrying their oils and instruments. They measured, anointed, and prepared, performing rituals passed down through generations. The air would have smelled faintly of herbs and resin, mingling with the dry desert dust. Every movement was deliberate, every procedure guided by belief, tradition, and reverence. Yet the workshop also reveals the practicality of ancient Egyptian life. The placement of tools, the preparation of materials, and the construction of beds all show meticulous organization. This was not merely ritual, it was a profession, a discipline honed over centuries. The ancient Egyptians did not leave the treatment of the dead to chance. Each step was measured, recorded, and repeated with precision, as though each body was a sacred manuscript, its preservation a testament to the civilization itself. One of the most haunting aspects of the find is its frozen-in-time quality. Walking through the excavation site, archaeologists have remarked on how it feels as if the embalmers might return at any moment. No dust has truly settled. No tools have been moved by hands other than those of time itself. This suspension between past and present is rare in archaeology. Here history is tangible, almost tactile, whispering secrets that only those willing to listen can hear. Beyond its eerie charm, the workshop sheds light on the broader culture of death in Egypt. It shows that death was not the end, but a continuation, a journey requiring care, preparation and ceremony. Tombs and pyramids are often the most visible relics of this culture, but the workshops reveal the intimate human side of funerary practices. They remind us that for the Egyptians, death was deeply personal, intertwined with beliefs about immortality, divine protection, and respect for ancestors. The workshop also helps correct some modern assumptions. For centuries, mummification was seen primarily as a process for royalty. Yet this discovery suggests that preparation for the afterlife was a professional craft, practiced for a range of individuals, not just pharaohs or nobles. It democratizes death in a way, showing that respect for the dead was a shared cultural value. As archaeologists continue to study the site, each new fragment, each new tool, tells a story. The jars, the stone beds, even the layout of the workshop reveal methods and traditions that had been passed down for generations. And while we will never meet the embalmers, we can feel their presence in the precision of their craft, the care of their work, and the silent spaces they left behind. Saqqara's mummification workshop is a reminder that history is not only found in pyramids and tombs, but in the quiet, almost invisible spaces where life and death intertwined. It asks us to slow down, to observe, and to respect the meticulous work of those who came before us. And in doing so, we glimpse a world that is astonishing, somber, and profoundly human. As you close your eyes and drift, imagine walking through the workshop. Feel the smooth stone beds beneath your hands. Smell the faint fragrance of resins. Picture the embalmers moving with deliberate care, their chants soft in the air, the sun spilling through cracks above. It is a place of respect, of ritual, of humanity reaching across millennia. And it is here, in Saqqara, that the story of life, death, and the afterlife comes alive once again. The Pet Cemetery of Berenice. In the scorching sands of Egypt's eastern desert, along the shores of the Red Sea, lies the ancient port city of Berenice. Once a thriving trade hub, it connected Egypt with the distant lands of Africa, Arabia, and India. Ships came and went, laden with spices, textiles, and precious goods. Merchants and sailors bustling along its piers created a lively cosmopolitan city. But beneath the dust and ruins, archaeologists in 2011 stumbled upon something entirely unexpected, something that spoke not of trade or conquest, but of love, loyalty, and devotion. What they found was a cemetery unlike any other, not for humans, but for their beloved pets. Cats, dogs, and even monkeys had been laid to rest with careful attention and care. Hundreds of skeletons were unearthed, each telling a story of companionship, loss, and human emotion that transcends millennia. The excavation revealed animals lovingly wrapped in blankets, nestled into baskets, and sometimes even adorned in collars. Imagine a tiny dog curled up in a basket, its head resting gently on its paws, much like it might have slept centuries ago at its master's feet. Cats were buried with the same care, curled into protective poses as if still guarding their homes. Monkeys, rare and exotic even then, were included among these cherished companions, highlighting the special bonds humans have always formed with animals. Dating back to the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, this site is nearly 2,000 years old, making it the earliest known pet cemetery in the world. The discovery confirms what many of us have always felt instinctively. Humans have always loved their furry and feathered family members deeply. The site is a testament to the continuity of this affection across time, that the joy, loyalty, and grief we experience with animals today was shared by people 2 millennia ago. Walking through the cemetery in imagination, one can picture the lives these animals had. Perhaps a dog patrolled the bustling streets of Berenice, accompanying a merchant on his daily rounds. Maybe a cat prowled along the docks, keeping mice away from precious cargo. Some animals might have played among children, or even entertained visiting sailors from distant lands. Each one had its place, its personality, and its impact on the humans around it. And when death came, they were honored and cared for, not discarded, but given a final resting place with dignity. The layout of the cemetery reveals patterns of affection. Some animals were buried in pairs, suggesting inseparable friendships. Others were laid with small artifacts, perhaps toys, collars, or simple tokens of remembrance. Archaeologists noted the care in positioning the skeletons. Nothing was haphazard. Each burial was intentional, showing that the emotional bonds between humans and animals were recognized and respected. This discovery challenges our assumptions about ancient societies. While we often imagine ancient people as being harsh or utilitarian in their daily lives, the Pet Cemetery of Berenice paints a softer, more intimate portrait. It shows that even amidst trade, politics, and survival, there was room for affection, grief, and sentimentality. People mourned their pets just as we do today. marking their loss with ceremony and care. It also raises questions about cultural practices and attitudes toward animals in antiquity. Why were these animals buried with such reverence? Were they seen as companions, spiritual guardians, or even symbols of luck and protection? While we may never know every answer, the site provides a rare, tangible glimpse into the personal lives of ancient people, moments that are often lost in the grand narratives of empires and wars. Imagine standing among the excavated remains, picturing the gentle curl of a cat, the alert pose of a dog, and the tiny hands of a monkey. Each skeleton is a story, a memory frozen in time, bridging the gap between the ancient past and the present. We can almost hear the faint echoes of human voices calling to their pets, the soft patter of tiny feet, and the loving hands laying each animal to rest. The pet cemetery of Berenice reminds us that love is timeless. Across centuries, across cultures, the bond between humans and animals has endured. It is a bond that transcends death, language, and civilization, leaving behind traces that archaeologists can uncover thousands of years later. This site is not just a collection of bones, it is a monument to companionship, loyalty, and memory, and it challenges us to think about the ways we honor the lives of those who share our world. As you close your eyes and drift, imagine walking among these ancient graves. See the soft sand underfoot, the warm Red Sea breeze on your face, and the delicate forms of animals resting peacefully. Picture the hands of the ancients gently wrapping each companion, whispering farewells, and laying them to rest. It is a quiet emotional space, one where love and memory persist, where history itself feels personal and alive. The lost golden city of Aten, beneath the relentless sun of Egypt's Luxor Valley, amid the sands and the echoes of history, archaeologists made a discovery in 2021 that sent ripples through the world of Egyptology. While the pyramids and tombs of pharaohs have long captured our imagination, this find was different, something far rarer. Buried for over 3,400 years, they uncovered an entire lost city, one that had remained hidden under the desert, almost perfectly preserved. The city was named Aten, after the sun deity that was central to the religious life during the reign of Amenhotep III, one of Egypt's most prosperous and influential pharaohs. Walking through the excavation, archaeologists felt as though time itself had folded back. Here was a city that had been bustling with life, and yet the streets were empty, the workshops abandoned, and the homes eerily silent. Every turn of the shovel revealed glimpses of daily life from ancient Egypt's golden age. Walls rose from the sand, defining streets and alleys that had once echoed with the voices of merchants, artisans, and palace workers. Inside these structures, the surprises kept coming. Kitchens held pots and jars still positioned as if the owners had stepped away for a moment. Tools lay scattered across workshops, ready for the next task. Jewelry, amulets, and decorative items shimmered in the dust, telling stories of wealth, craft, and personal style. Every item was a snapshot of everyday life, a tangible connection to the people who had walked these streets thousands of years ago. The city of Aten was a marvel of urban planning. Houses were constructed carefully, with rooms for living, storage, and work. Streets were organized in neat layouts, hinting at an ordered society that balanced the needs of artisans, laborers, and administrators. Some buildings were remarkably large, possibly used for communal gatherings or workshops producing goods for the palace. Other smaller dwellings gave us insight into the lives of ordinary citizens, families cooking, children playing, and pets roaming, much like the Berenice cemetery we explored earlier. What makes this discovery extraordinary is not just the scale, but the preservation. Unlike tombs or pyramids where artifacts are often found in isolation, Aten provides an entire urban ecosystem frozen in time. Researchers could literally trace the daily routines of its inhabitants, from fetching water to cooking meals, from crafting tools to worshipping in private shrines. It is almost as if the city was abandoned overnight, leaving behind everything the citizens owned, from simple pottery to exquisite jewelry. Archaeologists have called Aten the largest Egyptian archaeological discovery since the tomb of Tutankhamun, and for good reason. Tutankhamun's tomb gave us insight into royal life and burial practices, but Aten opens a window into ordinary life in the heart of a golden age, showing how the society functioned outside of palaces and temples. From artisans creating intricate carvings to cooks preparing meals for workers and nobles alike, Aten tells a story of community, labor, and culture. The artifacts themselves reveal a culture that thrived on creativity and religion. Tools hint at specialized trades. Carpenters, metalworkers, potters, and jewelers all contributed to the city's economy. Pottery and vessels, some still containing traces of food or drink, offer clues about diet and daily rituals. Even personal items like jewelry and amulets shed light on fashion, beliefs, and the spiritual lives of ordinary citizens. Walking through Aten in imagination, one can picture the city alive with movement, the clatter of tools in workshops, the chatter of neighbors, children darting across streets, and merchants calling out their wares. In the background, the grand palace of Amenhotep III would have loomed, a symbol of power and prosperity, connecting the lives of ordinary people to the grandeur of the pharaoh's court. What happened to Aten remains a mystery. Scholars speculate that the city may have been abandoned due to political changes, economic shifts, or religious upheavals. The sands of the desert covered it slowly over centuries, preserving it for modern archaeologists to uncover. And now, thanks to this remarkable find, we can walk in the footsteps of ancient Egyptians, experiencing their lives in a way that was previously impossible. Aten is more than just a city. It is a time capsule of civilization, offering lessons about urban planning, social hierarchy, culture, and the daily rhythms of life. It reminds us that history is not only about pharaohs and monumental architecture, but also about the people who lived, loved, worked, and built the very foundations of human society. As you close your eyes and imagine walking through Aten's streets, feel the warm Egyptian sun on your back, hear the whispers of the past carried on the desert wind, and visualize the bustling workshops and kitchens. This is not just archaeology, it is a journey across time, into a world that thrived thousands of years ago, now revealed as if frozen in amber beneath the golden sands. Europe's oldest map. Archaeology is often about uncovering objects, but sometimes it's about seeing the familiar in a new way. In 2021, researchers in France did exactly that. A carved stone slab, long stored in a museum and largely overlooked, revealed a secret that rewrote our understanding of Europe's early history. This was no ordinary piece of ancient art. It was in fact the oldest known map of Europe. The slab, called the St. Belec slab, dates back to the Bronze Age, between 2150 and 1600 BCE. At first glance, it might appear to be a decorative carving, geometric lines, shapes, and patterns etched into stone. But careful study using advanced imaging techniques revealed a more profound story. These marks represented mountains, rivers, and fields, a detailed depiction of a small kingdom in what is now western France. Imagine for a moment a Bronze Age ruler surveying his domain. Communication across territory was difficult. Armies and settlements were spread across the landscape, and governance relied on careful organization. The St. Belec slab provided a visual tool, a way to understand and control land, plan travel, and perhaps even strategize defense or trade. It was the first known territorial map in Europe, showing not just where people lived, but how early rulers conceptualized space and power. The map is subtle, yet astonishingly sophisticated. Rivers are traced in sinuous lines, hills and valleys indicated with deliberate marks, and boundaries between lands hinted at governance and ownership. Scholars suggest the patterns were functional, meant to communicate information about geography and settlements, rather than for ceremonial or decorative purposes. In essence, it was a practical guide to a Bronze Age kingdom, centuries before written records or widespread literacy. Researchers believe that such a map would have been invaluable in a world without modern tools. Consider travel, trade, and agriculture. Knowing the location of rivers, hills, and fields would help plan everything from crop planting to troop movements. The slab also suggests that the people of this era had a complex understanding of spatial relationships, demonstrating intelligence, foresight, and organization often underestimated in prehistoric societies. The discovery of the St. Belec slab challenges many assumptions about the Bronze Age in Europe. It shows that early societies were capable of abstract thought, mapping, and planning in ways we often associate with much later civilizations. It also raises questions about other lost maps that may have existed, and how knowledge of territory and resources shaped human development across the continent. As you visualize the Bronze Age landscape, picture the ruler or chieftain holding this stone slab, tracing rivers with his finger, planning settlements, and directing laborers to their fields. Imagine the sense of control, strategy, and understanding that came from seeing the land so clearly represented. In a world without GPS, smartphones, or even paper, this stone was a window into the kingdom, a tool of governance, and perhaps even a symbol of authority. The St. Belec slab reminds us that maps are more than mere objects. They are tools of power, understanding, and communication. They are also stories, frozen in stone, showing us how humans related to the world around them. Every line etched into the slab connects us across millennia to people who thought carefully about their environment, their resources, and their society. Even more fascinating is the realization that Europe's mapping tradition began much earlier than historians had imagined. From Bronze Age slabs like St. Belec to the great medieval and Renaissance cartographers, the human drive to visualize and organize territory has deep roots. In a sense, this slab is a bridge, connecting us to the ingenuity, intelligence, and ambition of our distant ancestors. Picture holding this slab in your hands, feeling the grooves of etched rock under your fingertips. Each mark represents rivers to cross, hills to climb, fields to tend, and borders to protect. In that simple stone, the entire world of a Bronze Age kingdom comes alive. Through it, we see how people understood their place in the landscape, how they controlled their environment, and how they began the timeless human endeavor of mapping the world. Blombos Cave. Every archaeologist dreams of a discovery that can rewrite our understanding of human history. In South Africa, researchers achieved exactly that at Blombos Cave, a site that would forever change the story of early humans. Located along the southern coast of South Africa, Blombos Cave is unassuming at first glance. Its rocky entrance opens onto a small space that, for tens of thousands of years, was home to our distant ancestors. Between 1991 and 2000, archaeologists excavated the site meticulously, uncovering artifacts that pushed back the timeline of human creativity by tens of thousands of years. Among the treasures found were engraved pieces of ochre, shell beads, and finely crafted tools. Each artifact carried a story, evidence of a sophisticated mind capable of art, symbolism, and abstract thought. The ochre, for instance, bears engraved patterns, tiny deliberate lines etched by human hands. Some might see them as simple marks, but these engravings reveal the earliest known attempts at symbolic expression, a form of communication or artistic thought far earlier than anyone imagined. The shell beads discovered at Blombos Cave are equally remarkable. They are the earliest known examples of jewelry, strung and worn, possibly as adornment or status symbols. These small, intricate items suggest that humans were not only thinking practically about survival, making tools for hunting and food preparation, but also thinking culturally about identity, expression, and community. The stone tools themselves are masterpieces of innovation. Carefully shaped, polished, and sharpened, they show advanced craftsmanship, revealing that the people of Blombos Cave possessed sophisticated skills in flaking, carving, and shaping stone for multiple purposes. These tools reflect foresight and planning, traits essential for survival, but also for thriving as a species with complex behavior. What makes Blombos Cave revolutionary is the age of these finds. The artifacts date back as far as 100,000 years, predating similar discoveries in Europe by tens of thousands of years. This evidence shifts the narrative of human development, proving that modern human behavior, creativity, symbolic thinking, and culture did not begin in Europe, as was once widely believed. It began in Africa. Imagine the people who lived here. They carved symbols into ochre with sharp tools, carefully stringing shells to create personal adornments. These were not random acts. They were intentional expressions of identity, creativity, and thought. Through these acts, we glimpse the earliest seeds of art, culture, and symbolism, behaviors that define humanity even today. Blombos Cave also reminds us that human history is deep, intricate, and interconnected. It forces us to reconsider assumptions about where culture and creativity began. For decades, European sites were celebrated as the cradle of human symbolic thought. Blombos Cave demonstrates that Africa, the birthplace of Homo sapiens, was not only where humans first evolved, but also where our earliest creative impulses flourished. This site has inspired researchers to look beyond simple survival. They now consider questions like, how did early humans perceive themselves? How did they communicate, express ideas, and organize social structures? Each artifact at Blombos Cave, the engraved ochre, the shell beads, the finely made tools, offers clues to these profound questions. Blombos Cave is more than a site. It is a window into the minds of our ancestors, showing us that even 100,000 years ago, humans were thinking deeply, creating meaning, and shaping their world through symbolic expression. These discoveries illuminate a simple truth. The creativity, ingenuity, and culture that define humanity today were already present in the minds of early Homo sapiens, long before the rise of civilizations, long before written language, long before Europe became the focus of historical study. As you picture the cave's interior, imagine humans carefully working in flickering torchlight. One is engraving ochre, another is threading shells into a necklace, while a third sharpens a tool. These were not random acts of survival. They were deliberate, creative, and profoundly human. In this way, Blombos Cave does more than inform us about the past. It connects us to our deepest roots, reminding us that creativity, symbolism, and culture are timeless traits of our species. History has a way of surprising us, sometimes in ways that challenge not just our understanding of the past, but our assumptions about identity itself. In 1968, a construction crew in Suonentokovesitornimiki, Finland, was working on water pipes when they uncovered something extraordinary, a warrior's grave that had lain hidden for nearly 1,000 years. At first glance, the grave was already unusual. Unlike typical burials of the era, this one was richly adorned. The warrior lay on a blanket of feathers, an uncommon marker of honor and prestige, suggesting a person of significance. Buried alongside were both a sword and women's jewelry, a combination that initially puzzled researchers. Was this a woman warrior, a rare exception in a male-dominated society, or did it indicate some other story entirely? For decades, the grave was interpreted under the assumption that it belonged to a female warrior, a rare but not unheard of phenomenon in Viking Age Europe. Scholars marveled at the combination of martial and ornamental artifacts, but the deeper truth remained hidden, locked away in the centuries-old bones. Fast forward to the 21st century, when advancements in DNA analysis allowed scientists to probe the past in ways unimaginable in the 1960s. When researchers tested the warrior's DNA, they discovered something remarkable. This individual had Klinefelter syndrome, a genetic condition in which a person carries both an extra X chromosome and a Y chromosome. This means that the Suantaka warrior did not fit neatly into modern binary categories of male or female. This revelation transforms our understanding of the Suantaka grave. Far from being a simple case of a woman warrior, this individual was likely non-binary, occupying a unique and honored position within their community. The presence of both martial and traditionally feminine items, the sword, the jewelry, the feathered blanket, speaks not only to their status, but to the fluidity of gender roles in this Viking Age society. Imagine the life of this warrior. Perhaps they were trained in combat, defending their people and wielding a sword with skill. Perhaps they also participated in cultural or ceremonial practices, wearing ornaments that reflected their identity and the community's respect. This individual's life, though shrouded in the mists of 1,000 years, now speaks to us through the careful preservation of their grave and the power of modern science. Archaeology, in this case, is not merely the study of artifacts. It is the study of people, of lived experiences, and of societies that may have been far more complex and accepting than we often assume. The Suantaka warrior challenges the notion that rigid gender roles are universal or timeless. It reminds us that identity has always been diverse, and that recognition and respect for such diversity existed long before modern debates. The grave itself is a time capsule of symbolism. The feathers suggest honor, and perhaps spiritual significance, indicating a person revered by their peers. The sword signals strength and martial prowess. The jewelry and clothing illustrate that this warrior's community saw value in their unique identity, merging traditionally masculine and feminine attributes into one respected individual. What can we learn from this burial? Beyond confirming the existence of non-binary individuals in early European societies, the Suantaka grave invites us to reconsider how we define honor, status, and identity. The warrior's society clearly valued this individual's contributions and recognized them as whole, complex, and integral members of their community. The Suantaka grave also underscores the importance of DNA analysis in modern archaeology. Without it, the nuanced story of this individual might have been lost, interpreted through the narrow lens of historical assumptions. Science allows us to hear the voices of those long gone, voices that tell stories of courage, skill, and identity in ways that history books alone cannot capture. Picture the grave as it was first discovered, the feathers still soft beneath the warrior's body, the sword gleaming faintly, the jewelry catching light in small glimmers. For over 1,000 years, the warrior rested here, a testament to the complexity of humanity. And now, through careful research and modern technology, this person finally speaks across the ages, reminding us that history is not just a record of events, it is a living tapestry of human experience, identity, and resilience. The Suantaka grave is more than a burial, it is a message from the past, an invitation to understand the rich diversity of human lives and identities, and a reminder that our understanding of history is always evolving. Olduvai Gorge. Some places in the world are more than just locations. They are time machines, preserving the story of humanity itself. Olduvai Gorge, in the northeast corner of Tanzania, is one of those rare sites. This deep canyon, carved by the forces of nature over millions of years, has become one of the most important archaeological and paleoanthropological sites in the world. Olduvai Gorge isn't a single dig site, but rather a stretch of land spanning several kilometers, revealing layers of geological and human history that date back nearly 2 million years. Imagine standing on its edges, looking down into the deep ravine, knowing that beneath your feet lies a record of early human evolution that spans millennia. The gorge was first studied in the 20th century by a team of pioneering researchers, including Mary and Louis Leakey, whose work would reshape our understanding of early humans. Their excavations revealed a treasure trove of stone tools, animal bones, and the fossilized remains of some of our earliest ancestors. Among these were Homo habilis, an archaic human species, whose very name means handyman, reflecting their sophisticated use of tools. The stone tools discovered at Olduvai are among the earliest evidence of technology in human history. These weren't simple rocks, they were carefully shaped, designed for cutting, scraping, and hunting. Each tool tells a story, not just of survival, but of ingenuity and the development of culture. These early humans were not passive observers of their environment. They actively shaped their world, crafting implements to improve their lives. Fossils at Olduvai Gorge reveal more than just physical traits. They give us insight into daily life, diet, and social organization. Bones of large prey animals show that early humans were capable hunters and scavengers, while cut marks indicate butchering practices and use of fire. Together, these findings provide a window into the cognitive abilities and adaptability of early humans. Olduvai Gorge also provides a rare longitudinal view into human evolution. By studying different layers of sediment, scientists can trace how hominid species evolved over time. The site contains evidence of multiple species of early humans, including Homo erectus, who exhibited even greater technological sophistication, such as the development of hand axes and more advanced hunting techniques. Each stratum of the gorge is like a page in a book, telling the story of how humanity gradually became the species we are today. Beyond tools and fossils, Olduvai Gorge has taught us how early humans interacted with their environment. Researchers have analyzed pollen, stone types, and fossilized flora and fauna to reconstruct ancient landscapes. They discovered that early humans thrived in a variety of ecosystems, from lakeshores to grasslands, adapting their tools and strategies to survive in changing climates. This adaptability is one of the hallmarks of human evolution. The work at Olduvai Gorge is far from over. Every excavation season uncovers new artifacts, challenging previous assumptions and expanding our knowledge. Modern techniques, including 3D imaging, isotopic analysis, and DNA extraction, are shedding new light on old discoveries, allowing scientists to study the behavior, diet, and even migration patterns of early humans in unprecedented detail. Standing at Olduvai Gorge today, it's easy to feel a connection across time. 2 million years ago, Homo habilis may have looked up at the same sky, listened to the same winds, and struggled to survive in ways both familiar and foreign to us. Their ingenuity, adaptability, and resilience laid the foundations for all humans who followed. Olduvai Gorge is not just a site, it is a monument to humanity's long journey. It reminds us that our species is deeply connected to its past, and that understanding where we came from is essential to understanding who we are today. Every tool, every bone, and every fossil unearthed in this remarkable canyon tells a story of innovation, survival, and the enduring human spirit. As the sun sets over the gorge, painting the cliffs in shades of gold and red, one can almost hear the whispers of the past, the footsteps of Homo habilis, the crackle of fire, and the soft shaping of stones. These echoes remind us that Olduvai Gorge is a living archive, preserving the story of humanity for all who seek to understand it. The Babylonian map of the world. Sometimes, history surprises us not with grandeur, but with a small, unassuming object that changes the way we view the past. Such is the case with the Babylonian map of the world, a tablet barely 5 inches high and 3 inches wide, now housed in the British Museum since the late 1880s. At first glance, it may seem tiny and unremarkable. Yet this diminutive artifact is a profound window into how the ancient Babylonians perceived their world, both physically and spiritually. Dating back to the 6th century BCE, the map is made of clay and inscribed in cuneiform script, the wedge-shaped writing system of Mesopotamia. It is sometimes referred to as the Imago Mundi, Latin for image of the world, because it attempts to depict the entirety of the known world at that time. While it is small, the map is strikingly detailed in its scope. It shows the Euphrates River, flowing through the heart of Mesopotamia, and important cities like Babylon itself and Susa, an ancient city of great administrative and cultural importance. Beyond the familiar rivers and cities, the map presents a fascinating worldview. Surrounding the known land is a circular ocean, almost like a protective moat, encasing the world. Beyond this watery boundary lie distant, often mythological lands and mountains. It is clear that the Babylonians saw the world, not just geographically, but also symbolically, reflecting the limits of their knowledge and imagination. Inscribed upon the tablet are cuneiform texts that add even more depth. Among these texts is a description of Marduk, the chief deity of Babylon, and the god's role in shaping the world. According to the inscriptions, Marduk created Babylon as the center of the universe, a reflection of the city's political and religious significance. The tablet thus tells us not only where the Babylonians thought places were, but also how they interpreted their place in the cosmos. Geography and theology are intertwined in a way modern maps rarely are. The Babylonian map of the world also shows a sense of human curiosity and observation. The way rivers, mountains, and surrounding lands are depicted suggests careful observation of the natural world. Yet at the same time, myth and legend are layered onto these observations. The map contains references to regions beyond, likely unknown or feared, blending cartography with storytelling. These outer lands are often described in terms of monsters, exotic peoples, or mythical geography, a reminder that the Babylonians' world was as much a spiritual landscape as a physical one. What makes this map truly remarkable is that it represents one of the earliest attempts at global visualization. Long before the age of Ptolemy, long before explorers set sail to chart continents, the Babylonians had already created a conceptual image of the world. They were asking the same questions we do today. Where are we? How is the world organized? What is beyond the lands we know? And in answering them, they blended observation, imagination, and faith into a single enduring artifact. Holding a replica of this tablet, one can almost feel the hand of the ancient scribe at work, carefully pressing each wedge-shaped character into the clay. Each inscription is a voice from the past, conveying a worldview that is at once practical, religious, and profoundly human. The Babylonians were mapping more than territory, they were mapping their understanding of existence itself. Scholars today study the tablet not only for its geography, but for its insight into Babylonian culture, religion, and thought. It reveals how a civilization saw itself at the center of the cosmos, yet conscious of the mysterious and dangerous unknown that lay beyond. The map also underscores the interplay between power, religion, and knowledge, showing that maps have always been more than tools for navigation. They are instruments of perception and ideology. The tiny Babylonian map of the world reminds us that human curiosity is timeless. Millennia ago, people were contemplating the same questions we still ask today. Where do we come from? What lies beyond? How do we make sense of the universe? And in their answers they left behind a record that continues to captivate and inform. As you imagine tracing the rivers and mountains of the clay tablet, consider the journey from ancient Babylon to modern cartography. Today, our maps are global, precise, and digital, yet their roots lie in small, hand-carved tablets like this one. The Babylonian map of the world is a testament to human ingenuity, imagination, and the enduring desire to understand our place in the cosmos. In the quiet halls of the British Museum, this little clay tablet sits humbly, yet it carries the weight of centuries. It is a reminder that sometimes the biggest stories come in the smallest packages. Cycle jewelry. Archaeology often reminds us that even the smallest artifacts can tell the largest stories about humanity. One such find comes from Skull Cave, perched on the slopes of Mount Carmel in Israel. This cave has been a stage for human life for tens of thousands of years, hosting both Neanderthals and early modern humans. Yet it was in the mid-2000s that researchers stumbled upon a discovery that would reshape our understanding of early human behavior and culture. Small, perforated shell beads, carefully arranged to form jewelry. The shells themselves were unassuming at first glance, ordinary fragments of sea life. But upon closer inspection, scientists noticed that each shell had tiny holes deliberately carved into them, perfectly suited for stringing onto a necklace or bracelet. What was most astonishing, however, was their age. Dating methods suggested these shells were up to 100,000 years old, making them some of the earliest known jewelry in human history. This discovery immediately raised fascinating questions. Why would early humans, living in the harsh conditions of the Ice Age, expend effort to create ornaments? Survival was demanding, yet these people were thinking symbolically, reaching beyond the purely practical. Jewelry in Skull Cave was more than decoration. It was an expression of identity, social status, and possibly spirituality. Experts propose that these beads were used to denote social hierarchy or group membership. Perhaps only certain individuals within the community could wear specific shells, signaling authority, prowess, or familial lineage. In this sense, even tens of thousands of years ago, humans were engaging in complex social signaling, using artifacts to communicate without words. Yet the symbolic significance of the beads may not have stopped there. Some researchers speculate that jewelry carried spiritual or protective meaning. Could these necklaces and bracelets have acted as talismans, guarding the wearer against illness, evil spirits, or misfortune? Or were they gifts or offerings, exchanged to cement bonds or mark rites of passage? We may never know for certain, but the act of creating such delicate items demonstrates a sophistication of thought and culture far earlier than many had imagined. The placement of the beads within Skull Cave also offers insight. Archaeologists noted that the shells were found alongside tools, hearths, and other evidence of habitation, suggesting that they were part of daily life, not just isolated ceremonial objects. The people of Skull were balancing survival and symbolism, their lives interweaving the practical and the aesthetic. When we look at these beads today, it is tempting to view them as merely primitive jewelry, but they are far more than that. They are a tangible connection to our ancestors, a reminder that humans have always had a desire to express themselves, to create beauty, and to communicate meaning. These shells are not just artifacts, they are early echoes of the human spirit, resonating across the millennia. The discovery of Skull jewelry also changes the narrative of where culture began. For decades, Europe was considered the cradle of symbolic behavior, yet finds like these in Israel demonstrate that early modern humans in the Levant were crafting art, adornment, and social signals long before many European sites saw similar developments. This suggests that creativity and symbolism were intrinsic to humanity, emerging wherever humans roamed and survived. Imagine the scene. A small group of people, perhaps living in a cool, rocky cave, working patiently to perforate shells, stringing them together, and wearing them as necklaces or bracelets. They may have watched the sunlight glint off the polished shells, or felt the weight of the beads resting against their skin. These simple acts are humanity's earliest expressions of self-awareness and community identity, a bridge connecting us across 100,000 years. The implications of Skull jewelry are profound. It challenges the idea that early humans were only focused on survival, revealing instead a species capable of symbolic thought, social complexity, and aesthetic sensibility. It reminds us that creativity is not a modern invention, but a defining trait of humanity itself. Today, the tiny beads from Skull Cave sit in museums and research centers, fragile yet enduring. They offer us a window into the minds of people long gone, a testament to the timeless human desire to express identity, communicate, and create beauty. In every small hole drilled into the shells, there is a story waiting to be told, a story of innovation, community, and the enduring spirit of early humans. Through school jewelry, we see a profound truth. Even in the harshest environments, humans have always sought to connect, to adorn, and to leave a mark upon the world. The cave may be quiet now, but 100,000 years ago, it was alive with the silent elegance of creativity, a creativity that continues to define us to this very day. Venus figurines. Long before the age of written history, humanity expressed itself through small, often intimate works of art. Among the most iconic of these are the Venus figurines, sculpted representations of the human form, predominantly female, that date back tens of thousands of years. These figurines are scattered across Europe and Asia, spanning from the Upper Paleolithic period, roughly 28,000 to 20,000 years ago, and they provide a window into the minds, beliefs, and social structures of prehistoric humans. The Venus figurines are small, portable sculptures, often made from materials like mammoth ivory, stone, or baked clay. Typically, they range from just a few centimeters to about 25 centimeters in height. One of the most famous examples is the Venus of Willendorf, discovered in Austria in 1908, carved from limestone and dating back approximately 25,000 years. This figurine is a detailed depiction of a female body with exaggerated features, wide hips, large breasts, and a rounded abdomen. These emphases are not random. They are believed to symbolize fertility, abundance, and survival. The figures were intentionally portable, suggesting they were highly valued possessions, carried from place to place. Imagine an early human, walking through vast icy plains or forested landscapes, carefully holding this tiny sculpture. The figurine may have acted as a talisman for fertility, a symbol of community or kinship, or even a representation of a revered deity. Some researchers propose that these figures were instructional, a way to ensure successful reproduction, or guide rituals related to birth and life cycles. The Venus figurines are remarkable, not just for their artistic quality, but for what they reveal about the culture and psyche of prehistoric humans. Their stylization is consistent across regions separated by hundreds of miles. Despite the distances, early humans shared a conceptual understanding of the female form that transcended geography. It suggests that symbolic thinking, abstract representation, and perhaps even spiritual belief were widespread traits among early human populations. Interestingly, these figurines were not strictly realistic portrayals of women. Instead, they exaggerate certain features while leaving others almost absent. Faces are often blank or minimally detailed. Limbs may be small, and feet sometimes missing. This indicates that the figurines were not meant as portraits, but rather as symbols, idealized or conceptual representations of what was socially or spiritually significant. Many Venus figurines also contain signs of wear, which suggests they were handled, rubbed, or worn frequently, perhaps in daily rituals or carried as charms. This intimate use underscores the idea that early humans interacted with their symbolic objects in meaningful ways. These were not static pieces of art displayed on a shelf. They were active participants in human life, shaping behavior, belief, and identity. The discovery sites of Venus figurines provide additional context. Many were found in caves or sheltered locations, sometimes alongside hearths, tools, or animal remains. This placement may indicate that the figurines were used in domestic or ritual contexts, perhaps at key points in life, birth, coming of age, or initiation into community roles. Their repeated presence across sites spanning thousands of kilometers and years suggests a shared understanding of fertility, femininity, and survival that united early humans. Yet the figurines also carry an air of mystery. Why did our ancestors choose to exaggerate the female form in such a distinct way? Some scholars interpret them as symbols of survival and hope, particularly in harsh Ice Age climates, where fertility and abundance were essential for community survival. Others argue they may represent ancestral mothers, earth goddesses, or figures of worship, embodying the life-giving forces of nature itself. Over time, the Venus figurines have inspired countless interpretations. Some see them as feminist icons of prehistoric empowerment, celebrating the centrality of women in early human society. Others focus on their aesthetic and artistic significance, marveling at the skill required to create such detailed carvings with rudimentary tools. Whatever the lens, these figurines connect us across millennia, reminding us that humans have always sought to understand, depict, and honor life itself. The sheer diversity of Venus figurines also tells us about regional variation and creativity. In some areas, figures are rounded and abstract, while others display detailed ornamentation, necklaces, hairstyles, or patterns etched into the surface. This variation shows that while there was a shared symbolic language, individual communities expressed it in unique ways, reflecting local beliefs, environment, and resources. Consider the moment of creation. An early human artist selects a piece of ivory or stone, carefully carves the curves and contours, rubs, polishes, and repeats this laborious process for hours or days. Each figurine represents not only a technical skill, but a deliberate act of communication across time. The figurine carries the intentions, hopes, and beliefs of its maker, offering a direct, tangible connection to a human mind, thousands of years old. In the broader scope of history, Venus figurines challenge modern assumptions about prehistoric life. They reveal that early humans were not mere survivors in a harsh world, but creators, thinkers, and symbolic beings. They remind us that art, ritual, and culture are fundamental to humanity, not later developments but intrinsic to our very nature. Today, these figurines are treasured museum pieces, carefully preserved and studied. They continue to captivate archaeologists, historians, and the public alike, not only as artifacts but as emblems of human ingenuity, resilience, and creativity. Through their small rounded forms, we glimpse the values, beliefs, and lives of our distant ancestors, understanding that even tens of thousands of years ago, humans were reflecting on life, fertility, and identity in ways that resonate deeply with us today. The Venus figurines are not just stone or ivory, they are the echoes of ancient minds, whispering across time, reminding us that the drive to create, to symbolize, and to celebrate life is as old as humanity itself. Coventry cubes. Sometimes archaeology doesn't involve ancient pyramids, lost cities, or prehistoric cave art. Sometimes it starts with magnet fishing in a modern river. In May 2020, Will Reed and his two sons were engaged in exactly this hobby, along the banks of the River Sowe, in Coventry, England. As they dragged their magnet along the muddy riverbed, they unearthed something extraordinary. 60 small ornate cubes made of lead, each carefully engraved with intricate symbols, numbers, and designs. At first glance, the cubes seemed mundane, just heavy metal shapes, but the strange engravings and uniformity immediately sparked curiosity. These were not just pieces of debris from modern construction or discarded industrial objects. They were purposefully crafted artifacts, small in size, but loaded with mystery. Each cube was uniform in size, about the dimensions of a sugar cube, but covered in markings that seemed to suggest ritual, symbolism, or devotion. As Will and his sons documented their find and shared images online, the story spread rapidly. Researchers and enthusiasts began to analyze the engravings, attempting to decode their origin, purpose, and meaning. The patterns on the cubes are unlike anything typically seen in Western European archaeology, which immediately suggested that these objects had foreign cultural roots. After months of investigation and input from global communities, a likely explanation emerged. Experts now believe that the cubes may be related to Hindu prayer rituals. In some traditions, small metal objects, often engraved or inscribed, are used to invoke divine protection or blessings. The act of throwing these items into a flowing river is intended to carry the prayers downstream, invoking the attention of deities and ensuring that protective forces travel along with the water. The River Sowe, in this context, becomes more than just a body of water. In many religious traditions, flowing water is a symbol of life, purification, and divine connection. By submerging or releasing the cubes into a river, practitioners aim to ensure that their prayers reach the gods, that misfortune is diverted, and that spiritual energy flows uninterrupted. But this raises even more questions. Why in a small river in Coventry, England, would 60 ritual cubes end up in the exact same location? Coventry is not historically linked to Hindu settlements or religious centers, and the practice of leaving carved lead cubes in rivers is not commonly documented outside South Asia. This anomaly has led to multiple theories. Perhaps a migrant community was performing a traditional ritual, or someone brought the cubes from abroad, unintentionally or deliberately discarding them in the river over time. Others speculate it could have been part of a modern artistic or spiritual project, blending ancient symbolism with contemporary action. Each cube, with its distinctive engravings, invites detailed scrutiny. The symbols include geometric patterns, dot sequences, and tiny iconographic marks that resemble certain Indian numerology or Hindu yantras. Yantras are mystical diagrams used in meditation and rituals, representing cosmic energy and divine forces. If indeed these cubes were influenced by such practices, each one could have served as a portable, personal conduit to the divine, allowing individuals to focus their spiritual intentions and prayers. The discovery of the Coventry cubes is fascinating not only because of their physical characteristics, but also because of what they reveal about cultural mobility and transmission. These small objects bridge continents and centuries. Hindu traditions developed thousands of miles away in South Asia, yet here they appeared mysteriously in an English river. This speaks to the resilience of ritual practices, capable of surviving migration, globalization, and even centuries of cultural separation. The cubes also highlight a broader point about modern archaeology. History doesn't always come from formal excavations. Some of the most remarkable finds now emerge through accidental discovery, hobbyist exploration, or citizen science. Magnet fishing, metal detecting, and casual exploration of rivers, forests, and construction sites are increasingly contributing to our understanding of human behavior, past and present. In the case of the Coventry cubes, a father and his sons unwittingly became part of the archaeological story, opening the door for further research and interpretation. Researchers continue to study the cubes, using chemical analysis, imaging techniques, and comparative studies with known ritual artifacts. Questions remain. Who placed the cubes in the river? Were they part of a continuous ritual, or were they discarded as a one-time offering? Why did so many end up in one concentrated location? And are there other caches waiting to be found in other rivers or streams? The Coventry cubes remind us that archaeology isn't always about what's buried in the distant past. Sometimes it's about uncovering the unexpected in the present, discovering the ways in which humans across different continents, cultures, and centuries connect through ritual, belief, and symbolism. Each cube represents not just lead and engravings, but intent, faith, and a mysterious story that stretches beyond the river's muddy waters. In the end, the Coventry cubes are a testament to the interconnectedness of human culture. From ancient Hindu practices in South Asia to a small English river in the 21st century, they illustrate how spiritual traditions can transcend geography, language, and time. And for Will Reed and his sons, the cubes transformed a simple hobby into a journey of discovery, wonder, and global curiosity, proving that even in modern rivers, history can wait silently beneath the surface, ready to be revealed. The Tekaxitlalixtlalhuaca head. The world of archaeology is full of surprises, but few discoveries provoke as much debate and intrigue as the Tekaxitlalixtlalhuaca head. Found in Mexico City during the 1930s, this small terracotta artifact has challenged conventional understandings of history and forced scholars to reconsider the possibility of ancient transoceanic contact. The head is modest in size, only a few inches tall, but it is remarkable for its distinctly Roman features. The facial structure, hairstyle, and craftsmanship strongly resemble Roman art from the 1st centuries BCE to the 1st century CE. For decades, archaeologists and historians have debated how a Roman artifact could have ended up in central Mexico, thousands of miles from the Mediterranean. What makes this find truly fascinating is the context in which it was discovered. The head was unearthed beneath a pre-Columbian building, constructed in the 15th century, during excavations at the Tekaxitlalixtlalhuaca archaeological site. This layer predates the arrival of Columbus in the Americas, which raises the tantalizing possibility that the artifact could have arrived long before Europeans officially crossed the Atlantic. If true, this would suggest that ancient Romans might have had the navigational capabilities to reach the New World, thousands of years before the age of exploration. The head itself is finely modeled, capturing the attention of scholars worldwide. Its features are unmistakably Roman. The carefully detailed eyes, nose, and lips reflect the classical style of Roman terracotta art, while the hairstyle echoes those worn by Roman men of influence. The level of craftsmanship suggests it was not a crude imitation, but an authentic product of Roman artistic tradition. However, the story is far from straightforward. Skeptics argue that the artifact may have arrived in Mexico long after the Roman Empire, brought over by later European sailors, colonists, or collectors. In this scenario, the head could have been buried accidentally or intentionally beneath the pre-Columbian structure at a later date, making its Roman origins real but not evidence of Roman contact with Mesoamerica. The debate centers on archaeological stratigraphy, the study of soil layers. If the head was truly found beneath a 15th century structure in an untouched layer, it could not have been deposited later. But critics point out that the site was partially disturbed during construction and other activities, complicating the analysis. Determining the exact age of the soil layer and the head itself is challenging, leaving room for multiple interpretations. If the Tekaxitlalixtlalhuaca head truly predates Columbus, it opens a world of possibilities. Could Roman sailors have ventured into the Atlantic and somehow reached the Americas? Ancient Roman maritime capabilities are known to have been sophisticated. They built large ships capable of carrying goods and people along the Mediterranean and beyond. While there is no concrete evidence that Romans ever crossed the Atlantic, the head tantalizes historians with the suggestion that ancient civilizations may have been more adventurous than previously imagined. Beyond its potential as evidence of early transoceanic travel, the head also highlights the complexity of cultural interaction and migration. Even if it arrived in the Americas after Columbus, it reflects the ways in which Roman art, symbols, and craftsmanship could travel across continents, influencing distant cultures and leaving traces in unexpected places. The discovery of the Tekaxitlalixtlalhuaca head also underscores a key principle in archaeology: context is everything. A single artifact, isolated from its surroundings, can be misleading. Only by carefully analyzing the layers of soil, the construction of nearby buildings, and the broader cultural landscape can archaeologists hope to understand its significance. In this case, the head continues to challenge assumptions, sparking debates that stretch from Mexico City to Rome. Researchers continue to examine the head using modern techniques like thermoluminescence dating, chemical analysis of the clay, and comparisons with known Roman artifacts. Each new test helps refine our understanding, though definitive answers remain elusive. Whether it represents pre-Columbian transatlantic contact or later European interference, the head remains a symbol of the mystery and wonder that archaeology can reveal. Ultimately, the Tekaxik-Kalixtlahuaca head is a reminder that history is rarely simple. Artifacts like this force us to confront uncertainty, to question our assumptions, and to remain open to the possibility that the past holds secrets that challenge everything we thought we knew. It may be small, it may be centuries old, but this little Roman head continues to provoke curiosity, debate, and the imagination of archaeologists and history enthusiasts alike. The Baghdad Battery. Imagine holding in your hand an object that could rewrite our understanding of ancient technology. This is exactly what happened in 1938, when German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig stumbled upon a peculiar artifact while excavating near Baghdad, Iraq. At first glance, it appeared to be a simple clay jar, but as Koenig examined it more closely, he noticed something extraordinary inside: a copper cylinder encasing an iron rod, all carefully positioned within the clay. The arrangement immediately suggested a level of sophistication that seemed far ahead of its time. The iron rod was insulated from the copper cylinder by a layer of bitumen, a natural tar-like substance, creating the perfect conditions for a potential electrochemical reaction. Modern scientists who replicated the jar, using an acidic solution like vinegar, discovered that it could indeed generate a small electric current. Could it be that this ancient object was the first battery in human history? This idea is as fascinating as it is controversial. The jar, now famously known as the Baghdad Battery, is believed to date back to the Parthian or Sassanid period, roughly 250 BCE to 250 CE. The possibility that ancient people were experimenting with electricity nearly 2,000 years ago challenges everything we thought we knew about the history of science. Were the Parthians or Sassanids simply curious, tinkering with metal and acid? Or were they attempting electroplating, medicinal devices, or religious rituals? Supporters of the battery theory point to historical evidence of ancient metalworking. Electroplating, which involves coating one metal with another using an electric current, was not thought to exist until the 19th century. Yet the Baghdad Battery, if used in this way, could theoretically have helped gild small objects or religious artifacts, giving them a brilliant shine. Some researchers even speculate it could have been used in early medicinal treatments, since mild electric currents were later employed in therapeutic devices. Skeptics, however, caution against leaping to conclusions. There is no definitive proof that the jar was actually used to generate electricity or perform electroplating. Critics argue that the components could have served an entirely different purpose. For instance, the copper tube could have been intended to store sacred scrolls, while the iron rod and clay jar merely provided structural stability. Others suggest it could have been a ritual object, designed for ceremonial or symbolic purposes rather than practical use. The Baghdad Battery has fueled countless debates in academic circles and popular culture alike. Some enthusiasts even imagine that ancient civilizations could have had a rudimentary knowledge of electricity long before our modern understanding. Could this imply that the ancient world had a technological edge that has since been lost? Or is it simply an artifact whose true purpose will never be known? The mystery is part of its enduring allure. Adding to the intrigue are similar enigmatic artifacts around the world. Consider the Lake Winnipesaukee stone in the United States, whose purpose remains hotly debated, or the London hammer, a man-made hammer found embedded in 400-million-year-old limestone, sparking questions about its origin and age. Even the Bay of Jars in Brazil, containing what appear to be Roman jars, leaves archaeologists puzzled about trade, migration, and cultural exchange. Each of these discoveries highlights the tantalizing uncertainty that accompanies objects whose context is partially lost to history. Returning to Baghdad, the jar's physical design is itself remarkable. It is carefully crafted, with smooth clay walls and a precise cylindrical cavity. The iron rod is perfectly balanced within the copper tube, and the sealing bitumen ensures the elements inside remain insulated. Such attention to detail implies not casual tinkering, but deliberate design and intent. Whoever created it clearly had a sophisticated understanding of materials, even if they didn't grasp the underlying science the way we do today. Modern experiments have attempted to bring the Baghdad Battery to life. When filled with acidic liquids like vinegar or lemon juice, it produces a measurable electric current, albeit weak. The current is enough to plate gold onto a silver surface, replicating some hypothesized ancient uses, yet no artifacts from the period show clear signs of electroplating. This absence leaves historians divided. Was it a failed experiment, a short-lived technology, or something else entirely? The Baghdad Battery remains an emblem of the mystery of ancient ingenuity. It forces us to consider how much of human knowledge has been lost, forgotten or misunderstood over the centuries? Could the Parthians and Sassanids have possessed technological skills that rival early modern innovations? Or is the jar simply a curious artifact whose true purpose has slipped through the cracks of history? Ultimately, the Baghdad Battery is more than just a jar. It is a symbol of the limitless curiosity of humanity, a relic that invites us to question our assumptions and explore the possibilities of the past. Whether it was a battery, a storage vessel, or a ceremonial object, it demonstrates that even the simplest-looking artifacts can hold profound mysteries, and in the shadow of such enigmas, the line between myth, imagination, and reality becomes beautifully blurred. The Uluburun shipwreck. Beneath the crystal waters of southern Turkey lies a secret buried in time, a wooden vessel that sailed the seas more than 3,000 years ago, long before Rome or Greece had risen to power. This is the story of the Uluburun shipwreck, one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries of the modern age, a time capsule from the Bronze Age, perfectly preserved in the silence of the deep. It all began in 1982. A Turkish sponge diver named Mehmet Çakır was exploring the coast near the small town of Kaş, searching for sponges as generations before him had done. But that day, something glittered among the coral and stone, a cluster of strange greenish metal shapes. They were not rocks, nor coral. They were ingots, large, heavy bars of copper, shaped like ox hides. Çakır, curious, surfaced and drew a sketch of what he had found. That simple drawing of what looked like lumps of bronze would go on to change the world's understanding of ancient trade. Within months, word reached Oguz Alpözen, director of the Bodrum Museum of Underwater Archaeology. Intrigued, he sent a team to investigate. What they found at a depth of around 45 meters stunned them. There, scattered across the seabed, was the wreck of an ancient ship, its timbers now little more than shadows, but its cargo perfectly preserved. Hundreds of copper ingots, dozens of amphorae, fragments of ivory, beads of glass, and tools of bronze, the remains of a world long gone, waiting to be told again. Archaeologists realized quickly, this was no ordinary wreck. This ship was a merchant vessel, one that had sailed around 1300 BCE, during the Late Bronze Age, a time when great powers ruled the eastern Mediterranean, the Egyptians, the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, and the Canaanites. And this vessel had touched all of their worlds. Its cargo was a treasure chest of history. More than 10 tons of copper ingots, likely mined in Cyprus, about a ton of tin, the metal that when combined with copper made bronze, the lifeblood of ancient civilization. There were also glass ingots, in shades of cobalt blue, lavender and turquoise, the raw material for jewelry and ornamentation. There were ebony logs from Africa, ivory tusks from elephants and hippopotamuses, and among them all, delicate treasures, scarabs, bearing the names of Egyptian pharaohs, Canaanite jewelry, Mycenaean swords, and gold pendants of intricate craftsmanship. Every single item told a story of trade, culture, and connection. The Uluburun ship wasn't just a boat, it was a floating embassy of civilizations. When archaeologists pieced together the ship's route, it began to resemble a Bronze Age superhighway of trade. The copper from Cyprus, the tin perhaps from Central Asia, glass from Egypt, ebony and ivory from Africa, and artisans from across the Mediterranean. This single ship represented the global trade network of 3,300 years ago, proof that the ancient world was more interconnected than anyone had ever imagined. Among the cargo were also personal belongings, the tools and keepsakes of the ship's crew. They found a bronze sword, the kind used by Canaanite merchants or guards. There were balance weights made of stone, used to measure goods, evidence of a meticulous trade system. Fragments of wooden writing boards suggested the presence of literate scribes aboard, keeping record of the voyage. And tucked among the cargo, a gold scarab of Queen Nefertiti, wife of the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten. It was an object of incredible significance, an unmistakable signature of royal connection. That single scarab alone hinted that this ship might have been carrying luxury goods intended for a king or a palace, perhaps even a diplomatic gift between empires. But how did it sink? The evidence suggests that the Uluburun ship was caught in a storm, driven against the rocks of the steep Lycian coast. The crew had no chance. Within moments the vessel went down, its cargo spilling out across the seabed where it would remain untouched for over 3 millennia. Excavation began in earnest in 1984, and lasted for 11 long years. Underwater archaeologists from the Institute of Nautical Archaeology worked tirelessly, descending again and again to carefully remove each artifact. The conditions were brutal, the site was deep, the visibility often poor. Each dive lasted less than 20 minutes, but every moment was crucial. Piece by piece, the ancient ship came back to life. More than 22,000 dives were made to recover the full cargo, a staggering commitment to uncovering the past. What emerged was something bigger than anyone expected. This was not just the story of one ship, it was the story of an entire age of connection, when kings and traders, smiths and sailors all took part in a vast web of commerce that stretched from the Baltic to Egypt, from Mesopotamia to the Aegean. One of the most remarkable finds was a set of weights that used the same system as found in both Egypt and Mesopotamia. That meant merchants across thousands of miles used the same standards, just like the metric system of today. It revealed an astonishing level of sophistication. These were not primitive traders. They were mathematicians, navigators, and diplomats. They spoke the languages of exchange and value, long before coins even existed. Even the way the ship was built offered clues. The timbers were of cedar wood, likely from Lebanon. The joints were fitted using mortise and tenon joinery, a method typical of Egyptian shipbuilding. It suggested collaboration or influence across cultures. This was quite literally a ship built from international cooperation, thousands of years before the term existed. The Uluburun wreck also deepened our understanding of Bronze Age technology. Until its discovery, scholars could only speculate about how far ancient seafaring had advanced. Now we had proof. These sailors navigated with nothing more than the stars, yet they managed to cross hundreds of miles of open sea. They carried precious metals, luxury items, and everyday goods alike. The cargo included tools for crafting, jars of resin, and even raw materials for perfume, an entire microcosm of human ambition. Perhaps the most moving artifacts were the small personal items: a scarab necklace, a bronze pin shaped like a duck, a wooden writing board with traces of wax still visible, a tiny gold ring that might have belonged to one of the crew. Each piece whispered of real people, men who lived and worked and laughed on the deck of a ship now lost to history. For them, this voyage may have been just another job. For us, it became a bridge across 30 centuries. When the findings were finally published, historians realized that the Uluburun shipwreck rewrote entire chapters of Bronze Age history. It showed that international trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange were thriving over 1,000 years before the fall of Troy. It was evidence that human civilization, even then, was defined not by isolation, but by connection. Every copper ingot, every ivory carving, every jar of resin told the same story. Humanity has always sought to reach beyond its borders. Today, the recovered artifacts from the Uluburun shipwreck are preserved in the Bodrum Museum of Underwater Archaeology. There they stand as silent witnesses to an ancient world, one that was as complex, ambitious, and interconnected as our own. The Uluburun ship still lies beneath the waters, her hull resting quietly in the deep. But through her, we remember a world long before ours, when merchants and sailors braved the unknown, guided only by starlight and hope, carrying the dreams of their civilizations across the endless sea. The Aztec calendar stone, in the heart of Mexico City, beneath the dust and bustle of the modern world, lay a forgotten masterpiece, a stone that once stood as the beating heart of an empire. For centuries it lay buried in silence, its carvings unseen, its meaning lost, until one day, in 1790, during the reconstruction of the Plaza Mayor, workers uncovered it by chance. A slab of stone so large and so intricately carved that it seemed less like an artifact, and more like a message from another world. This was the Aztec calendar stone, or as it is known in Nahuatl, the Tonatiuh, the stone of the sun. The discovery shook the world. It wasn't just a relic, it was a revelation. Here, in the very center of the former Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, was proof of a civilization whose mastery of art, mathematics, and astronomy rivaled the greatest empires of the Old World. The stone itself is immense, nearly 12 feet in diameter, over 3 feet thick, and weighing almost 25 tons. Carved from a single block of basalt, it dominates any space it occupies. Every inch of its surface is alive with imagery, symbols of gods, cosmic cycles, and the passage of time itself. It is not merely a calendar, it is a map of the universe, a sacred diagram of existence. At its center, a face stares outward, fierce, symmetrical, and eternal. This is Tonatiuh, the sun god, who rules over the current age, the fifth sun. His mouth is open, bearing a blade-like tongue, symbolizing the insatiable hunger of the sun, which demands blood to keep moving through the heavens. Around him, 4 squares represent the 4 previous worlds, or suns, that came before ours. The Aztecs believed that the world had not been created once, but many times, and each time it ended in destruction. The first sun was destroyed by jaguars, the second by wind, the third by fiery rain, the fourth by floods, and now we live beneath the fifth sun, a world destined, they believed, to end in earthquake and fire. The calendar stone is not a prophecy in the modern sense, but a cycle, an understanding that creation and destruction are eternal, each age born from the ashes of the last. To the Aztecs, this was not superstition, it was truth, written in the stars, echoed in the rise and fall of empires. For years after its discovery, the meaning of the stone baffled scholars. Some saw it as a clock, others as a calendar, and still others as a ceremonial altar. But as archaeologists and linguists began to decode the intricate carvings, they uncovered a deeper brilliance. The stone encodes 2 interlocking calendars, the Tono Pohuili, a 260-day ritual cycle, and the Shihu Pohuili, a 365-day solar calendar. Together, these 2 cycles created a grand calendar of 52 years, known as the calendar round. a sacred era after which all cycles reset. Every 52 years the Aztecs performed the new fire ceremony. All fires across the empire were extinguished. Priests climbed the sacred hill of the star, waiting for the Pleiades to reach their zenith. Only then, when it was certain that the heavens had not abandoned them, would they light a new flame upon the chest of a sacrificial victim. From that flame the fires of every temple, every hearth were reignited, ensuring that the sun would rise again. This ritual reflected their cosmic fear, that one day the sun would stop moving, plunging the world into endless night. And so, through ritual, through sacrifice, they sought to keep the world turning. The calendar stone was more than a tool. It was a covenant between humanity and the cosmos. Around the face of Tonatiuh, and the symbols of the four suns are 8 triangular rays, extending like solar flares, a reminder of the sun's omnipotent power. Beyond that ring, the carvings spiral outward into representations of the 20-day signs of the Aztec calendar: jaguar, eagle, serpent, flint, flower, and more, each associated with specific gods, days, and destinies. In the Aztec world, time was not a straight line. It was a living being, with personality, purpose, and rhythm. To be born under one day sign meant favor, another meant struggle. Every life, every fate, was intertwined with the turning of these cosmic gears. Further still, along the outer ring, 2 mighty serpents, the Xiuhcoatl or fire serpents, encircle the stone, their bodies forming the border of time itself. Between their jaws rests the face of another deity, likely Tonatiuh again, reborn through flame. To the Aztecs, the serpent was a sacred creature, symbolizing renewal, movement, and transformation, the cycle of death and rebirth that governed all creation. Thus, the stone tells a story of time and life, of gods and men, of the sun's eternal struggle against the void. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in Tenochtitlan in 1519, they marveled at the city's grandeur: floating gardens, temples rising above the lake, and marketplaces larger than anything in Europe. Yet within just 2 years it would all fall. The city was destroyed, its temples burned, and its sacred stones buried beneath cathedrals. The calendar stone, too, vanished beneath the soil. For centuries it lay hidden, as if the earth itself had swallowed the last heartbeat of the Aztec world. Its rediscovery in 1790 marked a rebirth, not for the empire that was lost, but for our understanding of it. The moment the stone was unearthed, it reignited curiosity about the people who had carved it, about their vision of the universe, and about the legacy they left behind. It was moved to the Metropolitan Cathedral, then later to the National Museum of Anthropology, where it stands today, a centerpiece of Mexican identity. Visitors stand before it, small and silent, dwarfed by its magnitude, drawn in by the gaze of Tonatiuh. Every symbol carved upon its face still burns with meaning, the pulse of a civilization that refused to vanish completely. Modern scholars debate what the stone truly represents. Was it a ritual calendar, a cosmic chart, a political symbol, asserting the Aztec emperor's divine power? Or was it all of these things at once, a fusion of religion, science, and art? Perhaps the truest answer lies in how it continues to command awe. It embodies a people's attempt to make sense of the infinite, to measure the unmeasurable, to bring order to chaos. In its spirals, its cycles, and its relentless geometry, one sees humanity's eternal quest to understand its place in the cosmos. For the Aztecs, the world was not separate from the divine. Every sunrise was a resurrection, every eclipse a warning, every carving a prayer. The calendar stone was both map and mirror, reflecting the universe and the human heart alike. Over 5 centuries have passed since it was carved. Empires have risen and fallen. The world has changed beyond recognition. Yet the Aztec sunstone endures, a monument to time, to belief, and to the endless rhythm of creation and destruction. To stand before it today is to look into eternity, to glimpse how the Aztecs saw existence itself as a cycle of suns, forever dying, forever reborn. And in that endless turning, one truth remains, that the quest to understand our universe, to mark its passage and find meaning within it, is as old as humanity itself. The Mataba Map. In the heart of Jordan, within the quiet town of Mataba, lies a story buried beneath centuries of dust and devotion. A story that began not with conquest, nor with discovery, but by accident. In the late 19th century, as builders laid the foundations for a new Greek Orthodox church, their tools struck something unexpected. Beneath the broken stones and earth, there shimmered tiny fragments of colored glass and stone, the remnants of an ancient mosaic. At first it was thought to be just another floor decoration, a relic from the Byzantine age, but as more of it was revealed, a vast image began to emerge, an intricate map, spreading across the church floor, depicting lands, rivers, and holy places. The workers and priests had uncovered something extraordinary. What they had found was the Mataba Map, a masterpiece of early Christian cartography, and one of the most important mosaics ever discovered. Dating back to the 6th century, the Mataba Map was more than art. It was a window into the world as the people of the Byzantine Empire saw it, a world centered not around power or empire, but around faith. The map stretched across the floor of what was once a Byzantine church, covering an area of nearly 16 by 5 meters, composed of over 2 million tiny tesserae, colored stones and glass. It formed a mosaic so detailed that one could almost trace ancient roads with the tip of a finger. This was not a map made for sailors or kings. It was made for pilgrims, for those who journeyed through the Holy Land, seeking to walk where prophets and apostles once walked. At the heart of the map lies Jerusalem, rendered in remarkable detail. It is the oldest known depiction of the Holy City in existence. You can see its walls, its gates, and its central street, the Cardo Maximus, running through the heart of the city, lined with columns just as it stood in Byzantine times. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the site believed to be the tomb of Christ, is marked clearly, its domed roof shining at the center of the map, just as faith stood at the center of their world. Around Jerusalem, the mosaic stretches outward, showing Bethlehem, Jericho, the Jordan River, the Dead Sea, and even distant towns like Gaza, Hebron, and Damascus. Mountains rise in patterned lines, rivers flow in deep blue, and ships sail across the salt waters of the Dead Sea. Fish are seen swimming up the Jordan, while others turn back, as if symbolically avoiding the lifelessness of the Dead Sea. Every detail carries meaning. Every tile was placed with care, not only to represent geography, but to represent belief. To the people of the Byzantine world, maps were not only tools of navigation, they were instruments of faith. The Madaba map reflected a universe centered around salvation, not conquest. Each city was chosen for its biblical importance, each location tied to the sacred stories of Christianity. The map was created at a time when pilgrimage was flourishing. Thousands of believers traveled from distant lands, from Egypt, Syria, and Constantinople, to visit the Holy Land. For them, the map was a guide, a sacred compass embedded in the floor of a church, meant to orient the soul as much as the body. When they entered that ancient church in Madaba, they would have stood upon the world of the Bible. Literally, every step across the mosaic was a step through Scripture. Centuries passed, empires fell, the Byzantine world gave way to new rulers and new faiths. The church that held the Madaba map crumbled into ruin, its mosaic buried under layers of earth and forgotten stones. For more than 1,000 years, it slept beneath the sand, silent, unseen, but waiting. Then, in the year 1884, during the construction of the Greek Orthodox Church of St. George, the past returned. As the floor was being cleared, the shimmering tiles appeared, colors still vivid, forms still alive. When scholars saw what had been uncovered, they were stunned. Here before them was the oldest surviving geographic floor mosaic in the world. The discovery not only amazed historians, it transformed the study of the Holy Land itself. For decades, the Madaba map became a key to rediscovering the geography of the ancient Near East. It helped archaeologists locate biblical sites whose positions had been lost to time, towns, monasteries, and holy places that had been known only from Scripture. When explorers used the map to trace ancient routes, they found that its accuracy was astonishing. The rivers, the mountains, even the spacing between towns were drawn with surprising precision for its age. More than that, it was alive. It carried with it a view of the world, shaped not by borders, but by belief and memory. It told a story not of empire, but of pilgrimage and devotion. Today the map remains preserved in the floor of the Church of St. George in Madaba. Visitors who enter the church step into the same space that Byzantine pilgrims once walked. Sunlight filters through the high windows, illuminating fragments of the mosaic, the blue of the Jordan, the golden walls of Jerusalem, the pale earth of the desert. The ancient tesserae still glow, whispering the geography of faith. Standing there, one cannot help but feel a connection, not only to history, but to the way ancient people saw their world. To them, geography was theology. The land was not divided by nations, it was bound by stories. Each mountain and river was a verse, each city a chapter. In the great book of creation, the Madaba map stands today as more than a relic. It is a bridge between worlds, between ancient and modern, between faith and archaeology, between what was believed and what was real. In a world where maps now stretch across satellites and screens, the Madaba map reminds us that the first maps were made not to conquer space, but to find meaning within it. It is both a masterpiece of art and a meditation on time, a vision of the world drawn in faith, colored in devotion, and preserved by chance. Over 14 centuries have passed since the first stone was set into its mosaic. Empires have risen and vanished, but there, on the church floor of Madaba, the ancient world still endures, not on parchment, not in books, but in stone and glass. The Madaba map is a memory made visible, the earth as seen through the eyes of belief. Otzi, the Iceman of the Alps. Imagine this, you're hiking high in the Italian Alps. The air is razor thin, the wind cuts like glass, and the mountains rise in every direction. Silent, ancient, unyielding. It's September 1991. Two German mountaineers, Helmut and Erika Saman, are trekking near the border between Austria and Italy, in a region called the Ötztal Alps. The ice beneath their boots glimmers in the afternoon sun. They stop for a moment, and then they see it. At first it looks like a pile of old debris sticking out from the melting snow, maybe a lost climber's gear, maybe nothing. But then they look closer. There, half frozen in the glacier, is a human body, dark skin, a twisted arm, something impossibly ancient staring back through the veil of ice. They had no idea then, but what they had found was not a lost mountaineer. It was one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. A man who had died more than 5,000 years ago, and who had been perfectly preserved in the ice ever since. He would come to be known simply as Otzi, the discovery. When the Simons reported the find, local authorities initially assumed it was a modern climber who had perished recently. Rescue teams arrived, expecting to recover a body perhaps a few decades old, but as they began to chip away at the ice, they noticed strange details. The tools buried alongside the body weren't made of steel or plastic, but of stone, wood, and copper. His clothes weren't synthetic. They were crafted from animal hides and woven grass. It slowly dawned on them that they weren't looking at a tragedy from recent years. They were uncovering a window into prehistory. Scientists arrived. The body was carefully extracted, and soon radiocarbon dating revealed the truth. Otzi lived and died around 3230 BC, more than 5,000 years ago. He was older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than Stonehenge, older than recorded history itself. The man in the ice was not just an ancient corpse. He was a messenger from another world. The man himself. Otzi's body was found curled on his left side, his head tilted slightly downward, his skin a leathery shade of bronze. His body was remarkably intact. Even his tattoos, over 60 of them, were still visible beneath his weathered skin. For scientists, this was a miracle. Never before had they found a natural mummy this old, this preserved, and this complete. Every detail offered a new clue about life in Europe during the Copper Age, that brief moment in time between the Stone and Bronze Ages, when humans were learning to work with metal for the very first time. Through analysis, researchers reconstructed nearly everything about him: his age, his health, even his last meal. He was around 45 years old when he died, middle-aged for his time. He stood roughly 5 foot 3 inches tall, and weighed about 110 pounds. He had dark hair, brown eyes, and a face hardened by the wind and cold of mountain life. His teeth showed signs of grit and wear, likely from eating coarse grains. But perhaps most striking of all, he was covered in tattoos. Over 60 carbon black markings run across his back, legs and ankles, simple lines and crosses, placed near joints and along the spine. Many believe they weren't for decoration at all, but rather a form of primitive acupuncture, ancient pain relief, for aching joints and arthritis. His world. Otzi lived in a time of transformation. Europe was emerging from the Stone Age. Small farming communities dotted the valleys below the Alps, living off barley, wheat, and goats. Copper tools were slowly replacing stone, trade routes were forming, and humans were beginning to leave their mark on the landscape. Yet life was hard. The mountains were harsh, winters unforgiving, and survival required both skill and luck. Otzi's clothing reflected this struggle, but also an incredible ingenuity. He wore a cloak made of woven grass, a coat stitched from goat hide, and leggings from deer skin. His shoes were lined with soft grass for warmth, and had leather soles tied together with string, essentially custom-made hiking boots 5,000 years ahead of their time. Across his back he carried a quiver of arrows, some broken, others incomplete. By his side lay a copper axe, the blade still sharp, its handle made from yew wood. That single axe told scientists something extraordinary, that Otzi lived at the dawn of metallurgy. To own a copper blade back then was like owning cutting-edge technology today. It meant power, status, and connection to far-reaching trade. His final hours. For years scientists debated how Otzi died. At first it was thought that he'd simply frozen to death in a storm, but later evidence revealed something far darker and far more human. X-rays showed an arrowhead lodged deep in his left shoulder. He had cuts on his hands and bruises on his body. He had been in a fight, and it was likely the arrow that killed him. The wound suggested that he had been shot from behind, possibly ambushed. Blood analysis revealed traces from multiple people, suggesting he may have fought off attackers before collapsing. One of his arrows had been broken mid-flight, implying it was fired in haste, perhaps while fleeing. Near his body lay his belongings: a backpack, a flint dagger, food, and his precious axe, all untouched. Whoever attacked him hadn't looted his possessions. This wasn't a robbery. It may have been revenge, a personal conflict frozen in time. His last meal. Even Otzi's stomach told a story. Using modern imaging, scientists found what he ate just hours before he died. A meal of wild ibex meat, red deer, grains, and dried fruit. It was a rich, high-fat meal, perfect for surviving cold mountain air. Tiny pollen grains in his intestines showed he had traveled from lowlands to highlands just before death, probably escaping or migrating. His body had endured a long climb and then exhaustion. Moments later, violence struck. It's haunting to think, the last thing he ever saw was probably the sun setting behind the snow, and the wind sweeping down the pass that would one day bear his name. The Iceman's legacy. Today, Ötzi rests in a specially controlled chamber at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. His body is kept at a constant 6 tarvers, with humidity carefully maintained to prevent decay. Visitors can see him through glass, a figure of leathery skin, curled in eternal sleep, frozen mid-breath. His discovery changed everything we thought we knew about ancient Europe. From him, scientists have extracted not only his DNA, but his entire genome. They discovered he had brown eyes, lactose intolerance, and a genetic predisposition to heart disease. They even found traces of wheat pollen in his lungs and bacteria in his stomach, the oldest evidence of Lyme disease ever recorded. It's as if the ice had not only preserved his body, but every story written inside it. The human behind the ice. But what makes Ötzi truly remarkable isn't just the science, it's the humanity. Standing before his preserved body, you can't help but wonder, who was he? Was he a hunter, a farmer, a warrior? Was he fleeing his enemies, or protecting his tribe? Did he have a family waiting for him somewhere below the mountains? He lived in an age without writing, without history, without memory, and yet 5,000 years later, we know his blood type, his meals, his final injury. Through him, the distant Copper Age has a heartbeat. Ötzi bridges time. He is the oldest natural mummy in European history, and one of the greatest time capsules humanity has ever found. His frozen form whispers not just of death but of endurance. He survived millennia, untouched, cradled by the glacier that took his life and preserved his story. When you look at him, you're not just looking at a body, you're looking at ourselves, at the shared thread of human struggle, survival and mystery that connects us all. The Iceman endures. Even now, decades after his discovery, Ötzi continues to reveal secrets. Each new study opens another layer of his story, the tools he carried, the illnesses he endured, the tattoos he bore. He is not a ghost of the past. He is a living dialogue between ancient humanity and modern science. The glacier took him, but the world gave him back, a message from an age long before memory, still frozen in the silence of the Alps.